There are two guys in the room, one holding the other by the scruff of the neck, and then the blonde guy tells the other to take his things and get out. But he shouldn't be offended by him, because this guy is the only one who can save the world. Leaving him no choice, the young man gathers his things, thanks a blonde guy named Ares, and tells him to do everything possible to save the world. Although he is a hero, but will he be able to cope without the help of this young man? And this is the beginning of the heroic path of an adventurer with the strongest buff in the world. Some time later, let's start with the background. Last night, Slada Meisti, was excluded from the group of the hero, who was an adventurer. Initially, he was asked to join the group by an old friend, telling him that he could just stay there and keep his skills a secret. He thought he could help, but he had another question. He has absolutely no money for travel and food. He understands that you can't do anything just like that or everything will be taken away from you. But we can assume that this is his gift as a hero. In this regard, he decides to find a new job. He comes to the Adventurers Guild. She is engaged in collecting medicinal herbs and materials as well as killing monsters. He hasn't been here for a long time. Upon entering the building, an old woman walks in front of him, whose bag has torn and some products have rolled out. The old woman can't bend down to get the scattered food because of back pain, so the lad offers her his help, saying that he can't pass by. But as soon as Sweet touched the old woman, her back pain immediately disappeared, which could not but please her. Carrying bags of groceries in his hands, he realizes that it is probably because of his ability called full automatic support that he was able to help the old lady. The effect is to temporarily increase physical capabilities and compensate for ailments by supporting muscles. As the name suggests, he cannot control his skill on his own, but he knows that the ability is activated when he wants to help someone. He's wondering how the others are doing. And yet, he tries to reassure himself that automatic support is not such a great skill, and that this is a group of heroes, and they can handle it without him. After taking the old woman all the way home, she thanks him, and he, in turn, says that it is always necessary to help those who are in trouble. Although he cannot use automatic support for himself, he uses it for the benefit of others. Even if he can't save the world directly, at least he can help others. Grandma asks if he wants to eat ice cream. An image of ice cream pops up in his memory, and a feeling of sweet taste appears in his mouth, which he loves so much. But Slad refuses, ignoring his rumbling stomach. However, Grandma managed to hear the rumbling of her stomach, and she sent him to eat ice cream. Soon the young man thanked the old woman for the treat. Some time later, a lively square where everyone is busy with their own business. Slad approaches the Information Guild counter, where he is greeted by a girl who politely greets him and asks him a question. Does he want to join the guild? To which he replies that he used to be an adventurer, but retired. After learning that Slad was an adventurer before, the girl asks if he has a badge confirming this statement. But he did not have the badge with him, as he did not know that he would need it. Then, the girl asks him to fill out a form so that they can verify the information with the main office. Slad clarifies whether this will somehow help identify his identity, pointing to the pen. To which, the girl gives him a positive answer, explaining that it is magic ink. Starting to fill out the form with this pen, he wonders if it really can help identify his identity. And if that's the case, then he should print each letter exactly and clearly. When he finishes filling out the form, he gives it to the girl and is told that they will call him as soon as they confirm his identity, so they ask him to wait. But before he can move away from the reception desk, a man's voice is heard nearby, cursing with someone all over the street. But the offender did not remain silent and said, instead of touching people, it would be better if he went hunting goblins, calling him a bearded old man. Slad briefly witnesses this scene and is surprised that an elf is standing in front of him, but he does not understand what she is doing here, because they do not like the smell of alcohol and usually do not appear in such establishments. He had already noticed that this man was a veteran, given his equipment, and this elf probably only recently arrived from her homeland. At this time, the main character decides to intervene so that no one gets hurt in the future, and he asks why don't they go their separate ways peacefully. But then the girl runs into him with claims that he is carrying and why he is meddling in his business at all. The man laughs and says that she is right, he just baptized her into the guild and she should be grateful to him. Here the elf can no longer stand it and goes into a rage, asking what kind of nonsense he is talking. And yet, Slad tells them to calm down, then turns to the elf, saying that one should not succumb to the provocations of someone who is a head taller. The man did not remain without attention and the main character says that it was just terrible on his part, since this act is bad. Realizing that he has been scolded, he goes into a rage, not believing what he has just heard. And he says that he has not seen him before, but judging by his equipment, he is another rookie. Both Elf and Slad understand that the man is seriously angry, and without thinking twice, the man takes a mug and pours the contents on the young man's head. Being completely wet, the man grabs the boy by the scruff of the neck and says that any impudent person in this guild needs education and calls him out. Slad understands that the situation is becoming dangerous, so he clarifies whether they should definitely go that far, to which he receives only a grin in his face. Completely resigned to the situation, they go to the exit, and then someone grabs his hand. It was an elf. She claims that it was her fault and that she crossed the line. And before he can finish, the man interrupts her, explaining to her that this is only his business with the guy, but not hers. She falls into a stupor and hesitantly lets go of the young man's hand. All the passers-by were looking at them. Everyone wanted to see what was going on there. Does Slad specify if they really need to do this on the main street? To which he receives an answer that everything is fine and that he wants to teach him a lesson as soon as possible so that everyone can see. Before he even had time to take a stand, he sees the opponent flying at him with crazy speed, and the expression on his face was comparable to a mad dog fighting for the last piece of meat. The girl finds out that this guy is a bear killer. His name is Hansa and he is a B-rank adventurer in the guild, and there is no one in the area stronger than him. Realizing how strong a man he is, the girl realizes that this boy has protected her. A receptionist girl runs out of the building and thanks for waiting, but he doesn't understand where the boy who was standing here has gone. The girl begins to explain to her that a guy named Hansa got angry and took the newcomer outside. The administrator clarifies whether the Hansa is accurate, and at the same time asks if the newcomer happens to have black hair. As soon as she realizes that it is him, she immediately runs to them faster to save Hansa. The elf stands at a loss and wonders if it is really necessary to save the Hansa. The man swings at the boy with all his might and is going to hit him, but nothing happens and the boy deftly dodges each blow. In his head, the boy thinks that this man reminds him of a huge bear. He has fast speed and wildness that goes beyond any limits. His punches are strong, but they should be strong, thought Slad to himself, dodging the blow again. Having prepared his fist for a blow, he says how fast this boy is after all and clarifies whether he is definitely a beginner. The boy answers him in the negative, saying that he is slow. The sled begins to move very quickly and circle around Hansu so that he can lose his balance, and soon, the young man manages to do it. Hansu does not understand why he is so out of breath. Voices can be heard from the crowd asking who is this guy next to Hansa and how boring it is to look at them. Someone else asks how long you can play with him and that he should finish as soon as possible. The boy asks if they should stop there, because he doesn't want to humiliate such a promising adventurer. Or is he hampered by his heavy armor, unable to endure such humiliation any longer? The man tells him not to joke with him like that, and just wants to swing at him. Then his hand just falls and he is unable to lift it anymore. Hansu asks why he can't move, and what did this kid do? The guy says he didn't do anything to him, just because he's against him. Therefore, his skill makes him weaker and weaker as a result of automatic weakening. Hansu clarifies what kind of skill is automatic relaxation. Slad explains to him that this is a unique skill. A unique skill is a skill incomparable to anything. It cannot be obtained naturally, and each such gift is unique and can be received only once in a lifetime. The owners of such skills went down in history as heroes. Hansa finally realizes that the kid is incredibly strong, since he is the owner of a unique skill, and decides to ask him why he reveals his abilities to someone like him. There must be people who are jealous of his skills and want to kill him, or organizations that would like to use it. With the last of his strength, he tells him that information about skills should be the most intimate knowledge. The guy explains to him why he told him about everything, because he wants Hansu to stay alive, so he asks him to surrender. The man asks again, should I give up? How could he give up on such a novice? Slade interrupts him and tells him to be quiet, explaining that if he didn't give up, his muscles would gradually weaken and his bones would break. Without them, his internal organs will be torn apart, after which he will lose consciousness and die. Hansu does not believe him to the last and tells him not to joke about him like that, because how can you defeat an adventurer of this rank? And then, out of nowhere, a certain arrow appears, aimed directly at the body of the lying Hansa. Then many more small arrows appear and they all attack the man. Pain pierces his entire body. On his last breath, he says that the armor suddenly became heavy. That's why Slad asked about the armor earlier. Hansu has flashbacks in his head of how the boy warned him that the rate of muscle loss is more noticeable than expected, and if this continues, it will be quite dangerous. The main character repeats once again that Hans needs to surrender. He can't believe that he needs to give up, that is, lose to some newbie. Slad tells him to say these words faster. But how can the strongest Hansa in the city lose to some newcomer, and even more so give up? And then someone from the crowd shouts SSS rank Slad Meisty Sama. A man and a young man look at the man who shouted it in disbelief. It was the receptionist, and then she says that the guild master wants to meet with him. Hansa realizes that he is not a beginner at all, but an adventurer of SSS rank. After that, he just falls to the ground from exhaustion. Slade realizes that he has finally given up and his hostility has disappeared. And then someone runs from behind him and hugs him. It was an elf with almost no clothes on. The girl is very glad that nothing happened to the main character, because she was afraid that he would suffer because of her. Now he understood everything and that she was just worried about him, so he apologizes for making her worry. And since he doesn't know her, he just calls her elf. Is someone in the crowd talking about the receptionist girl calling him an SSS rank adventurer? No one can believe it. The administrator calls out to the guild master standing in front of her. He, in turn, watches the young man in surprise. And after that, the whole guild kneels before the Slad and asks for forgiveness for the inconvenience caused. All eyes are on him. He feels burdened and thinks it would be better if they didn't say it. Some time later, sitting over a cup of coffee, the guild master cannot believe that an SSS ranked adventurer would appear in such a place. However, Slad says that all this is in the past. The guild master is surprised by the young man's modesty and says that he has heard of all his nicknames: the weakest dragon slayer, peerless, invincible, unemployed. It makes Slade feel bad. He feels quite confused, because his abilities are quite ordinary, but the two unique skills auto-buff and auto-debuff make allies stronger and enemies weaker. Therefore, he hoped that he could start a new life here. The guild master finally asks what brought him here. Slad replies that everything is quite simple, because it's all about money. To this, the master just starts laughing out loud, asking if he is joking. But the main character does not understand what made him think that way. The master explains that SSS rank adventurers have power, status, and prestige, and that he will never have to worry about money. But Slad says it's not like that, and he doesn't have that much money, and he lives in a small village. After these words, the master begins to laugh even harder, asking if he is joking again. But there is a misunderstanding on the face of the main character. The guild master says that it is worth putting jokes aside and the main character should have an S rank badge or higher, and only then he will be able to receive free food, drinks, and housing in the shops of guild members. Some time later, the dream comes to a huge building, similar to a palace in the most wonderful fairy tale. Emotions take over, and he begins to cry with joy that his rank has finally come in handy. But there's a girl peeking out from behind a tree. Slad notices a rustle, turns around and does not notice anyone, while the girl hid behind a tree, embarrassed to show herself to a stranger. In another place, two girls hit the table and ask how this is possible. They do not believe that he could have left without telling them. The man sitting on the couch says he doesn't care about this little fish. The group of heroes that is supposed to save the world will break up because he was kicked out of it. Two girls can't believe that he just walked away. The first girl's name is Ramuri, and she's a witch, and the second girl's name is Disha, and she's a holy virgin. Disha can't believe that this scoundrel escaped by betraying them, and she won't rest until she cracks him once. And Ramuri can't accept that Slade could do that, because he was the one who taught a half-breed like her the language. They both can't understand how he could do this. From the window, the hero Ares looks at the two girls and hears their conversation. He can't understand why he won't be able to live in peace until he gets revenge on Slade. Some time later, a local flea market, a place where you can find everything your heart desires. And so, on one of the shelves, Slad finds a book called The Story of Heroes. He thinks that in this book he will find a lot of new information about races. For example, that dwarves are stubborn, but agile and strong. Elves show almost no emotion, shy and distrustful of strangers. But before he can finish this word, Ethics falls on top of him. She lands right on top of him, and she immediately apologizes to him, saying that she didn't do it on purpose. He thinks to himself that she is different from the elves he read about earlier. An hour ago, Slad stands near the guild counter. Does the master specify the order for fresh slime from the Karuna Ice Cave? Slad says that he would like to try the ice slime candies that are given as a reward. The receptionist is wondering if he can't eat them every day. After all, he has so much money. Here the guild master and the main character begin to argue. The man suggests to him that it is better to perform an easy task, for example, to decorate the dragon Alzada in the west. But the main character does not understand where this task is easy. Then the master offers him another option, exploring the old ruins. Because of their dispute, the table starts to burn, and the girl tells them about it. Someone calls Slade by name. It was Ethics. She asks what the fuss is about, and she asks him to complete one of the tasks with her, since there are few tasks that she can complete alone with such a rank. Slade picks up the ad and sees that this is the elimination of goblins, which is what he wanted to do. The master attracts the attention of young people with his cough, and he begins to say that with the education of newcomers, the adventurer's strength will grow and the guild will begin to flourish, and with it the economy of their turbulent town will begin to grow. Young people look at him with a certain amount of contempt. Quickly moving on to another topic, the master tells Sweet to hit the road and prepare Ethics well for the task. The present time. Although they are going on a mission, but there is no money at all, so they are looking for the most necessary things at a flea market. An inspired ethicist resorts to Sweet and tells him to look at the dagger she found. He says this dagger will do, but the girl does not understand why he does this, because his class is not a thief. Just as Slade wants to explain what this knife is for, a man walks in the door, apparently the owner of this house. They try to justify themselves to him, but he, in turn, told them to just look around while he was gone. Enraged, he threatens them that if they don't get out of his house right now, they will have to pay for all these things. They obey him implicitly. Meanwhile, in the guild, brewing coffee, the girl and the guild master are sitting at a table drinking coffee. The girl asks, won't they just have to deal with the goblins? Then why did the master so easily entrust them with this task? It's kind of weird. But the master says it's very rude of her. Yes, it's true, the main point is to deal with the goblins. Just yesterday, a group of experienced adventurers also went on this mission and did not return. From this assignment, everyone whispers and bypasses it. Therefore, this assignment is considered a high-ranking one. Some time later, forest, trees, harmony and Ethics have been on the road for some time. Ethics asks, are goblins the size of a child? She managed to see them in the elf cave. Slade confirms her question, adding that goblins alone are weak and careless, but can become dangerous when they gather in groups. So sometimes you need to send expeditions to clean up the area. On top of everything else, he also says that there are goblins who attack girls and indulge in obscenities. They are called hobgoblins. He continues his story by saying that the hobgoblins are the descendants of a girl from the Earth race who became pregnant by a goblin. These creatures are smarter and stronger than the rest. Besides, some individuals may be over 10 meters tall. He doesn't stop and says that then a goblin magician appeared, and then he catches himself thinking that he talks a lot, so they walked in silence for a while. Slade thinks that this is not at all something that should be told to a girl. She thought she was bothering him with her request to join her, but now she sees that everything is fine. And then she says that if she had to assemble a team, she would have invited only him. Slade thinks that elves usually behave differently and don't trust people, but the ethics are completely different. After walking through the forest for some time, they notice the tracks of goblins, which lead them to the cave itself, where the goblins themselves live. Sitting in the bushes, Ethics says that they are goblins and is surprised that their lair is right in the middle of the forest. However, Slade is concerned about another question. How do they get rid of the guards? Then, Ethics tells him that she hasn't told him about her abilities yet. Crossing their arms and bringing them to their foreheads, they recite a spell in their own language, and ask the Sylph Wind Spirit to come. And a small creature appears in front of them, having wings and a crystal in its forehead. Slade is surprised that she can summon spirits and asks if she is a spiritual priestess. And then it dawns on him that priestesses have a special skill. The more naked the body, the more intimacy with the spirit increases, and that's why she was only in her underwear. Now he understood why she had such a revealing outfit. Slade tells Ethics to borrow some strength from the Sylphs and that she needs to shoot from this distance. But it seems to her that Sylph is more serious than usual. The main character hid behind a stone and says that one arrow should split and hit 3 enemies at once. But Ethics is worried that it won't work, because it hasn't done this before. Slade replies that she can't help in any way and she needs to trust Sylph. Automatic support is turned on here. Ethics pulls the bowstring. An arrow flying straight at the target is divided into 3 and hits the goblin directly. The girl does not understand what kind of terrifying force it is. After they have defeated the guards, they come out of hiding and go straight to the enemy's lair. Satisfied, Slade begins to praise Sylph and say how amazing she is. Such a force that she killed 3 at once. How powerful she is. Ethics would also be happy if it was praised for the work it has done. But suddenly one of the goblins jumps up and pulls the string of his bow, aiming at them. Without thinking for a while, he immediately takes up his sword, runs up to the goblin and plunges the sword into his throat with all his might, after which his lifeless body falls to the ground. The main character's hands are all covered in blood. Fear and fright are visible on Ethic's face. She says that she shot at a vulnerable place. Slad says that's not the point, because it's impossible to miss under the influence of automatic support. He checks that everything is in order with Ethics, and he takes out his sword from his bosom. Approaching the goblin, he plunges the sword into his throat again. Ethics asks in confusion, what is he doing? And Slad so calmly replies to her that he is only collecting materials, because his body parts will help them get a reward. He wants them to use this as proof of victory, because they give a certain amount for goblins. The main character explains to Ethics that the work of an adventurer is not as wonderful as that of a hero. Money, fame, aspiration, these are selfish aspirations that drive them, and the one who survives is the one who is ready to do anything. Slade realizes that Ethics is too kind, even with monsters so merciful that she unwittingly deflected the arrow. Although he doesn't have any special skills to teach her, he is only able to show her what an adventurer's life is like. Handing the dagger to Ethics, he says that she should try to use it too. It may be a cruel way, but now she knows the truth, and she has a chance to return home. The screams of some kind of monster are rushing through the area. And now a huge creature jumps out from behind the trees. Slad immediately realizes that this is a hobgoblin and that he is insanely huge. He's so distraught that he doesn't even look at them. The opponent must be hostile to him in order for the debuff to work. If he attacks them with Ethics, then his abilities will activate. Without having time to come up with a plan of action, Ethics rushes forward with Sylph. The girl masterfully creates a funnel with her body and bow. He approaches directly to the goblin's mouth, piercing it with an arrow from a bow, and warns Goblin not to touch her family. After she overcomes the monster, she realizes what she said earlier and tells Sweet that this is not what he thought, hitting him at the same time. But the main character does not understand. Then what should it mean? And he says he's in pain. Ethics begins to explain to him, since he saved her by risking his life, now they have become a family, and that protecting the people dear to her is her selfish desire. Clarifying, is such a desire enough to become an adventurer? Memories of a dream. He asks the woman sitting next to him on the bed, family, to which the woman says that yes, elves don't get along well with people, but they call recognized comrades family and cherish strong bonds for the rest of their lives. He remembered that elves are cold-blooded and distrustful of strangers, but in fact no one else cares about their family as sincerely as they do. The present time. In front of Ethics and Sweet lies the goblin's ear. The girl crossed her arms again and brought them to her forehead. It looks like she is praying. And he says that if the goblin's ear is properly cooked, you will get a good medicine that will help cure a lot of bruises. Slad looks at her with a smile on his face, saying that she is really kind. He would also like to complete tasks and travel with her. He stands up and holds out his hand to Ethica, so that she also stands up and tells her, welcome to the team. In response, the girl tells him that she will try hard. Meanwhile, the members of the hero's team. A scream comes from the house, asking how can you just leave? The guy in the raincoat says that her path as a member of the hero's team is over, to which Ares replies that his team is not just a bunch of adventurers. The guy turns around and leaves, while the head of the team follows him and cannot believe that he is going to run away and give up saving the world. He's almost catching up with him and wants to stop him. But the guy turns up behind him, asking if Ares really wants to stop him, saying that unlike the witch and the Holy Virgin, he doesn't care about the fate of this world. He thought that the hero's team was a chance to get more treasures from the dungeons. Did it seem to him that it could be better? But does he have anything left now? He doesn't understand how this could happen, because everything was fine until the one who everyone called just the porter left. Ares' hand tightens. He doesn't understand why this guy is back, and he asks what does he have to do with it. The guy swung at the young man and almost hit him, but he managed to dodge in time. Due to the fact that Ares did not calculate his strength, he rolled head over heels to the floor, and the guy, in turn, said that he had had enough and he was leaving. And he doesn't do it because he wants to escape or become a traitor. Ares, lying on the floor, tells him that if this useless piece of shit had participated in the battle, nothing would have changed. The guy walked up to the front door, turned to the team commander, waved to him and said goodbye that he was going to check it out. As soon as the young man leaves the building, Ares begins to scream loudly. He hears it and grins. Now from this moment on, he decides for himself where to go. But won't Slad get angry? Because even though he has a gift, he himself must understand that he has been afraid of rage for a long time, so he needs to be careful. The man says that Ares' coming-of-age ceremony is beginning. Now they have to learn his skill. The people standing around him begin to cheer loudly. Someone says that he is a born hero, someone shouts for him to save their world, and someone just praises him. That's how, at the age of 15, he became their savior, the only one who can defeat the devil. And he doesn't care about anyone but himself, but this whole crowd is dancing to his tune. And he can only enjoy the way they bow their heads in front of him. And he declares that he will fight the devil, but he has several conditions. However, Slad got in his way. And he was sure that if this garbage disappeared, then the girls would finally pay attention to it. But then why did everything turn out this way? And because of the departure of a simple porter, they all decided to leave him. Meanwhile, Erica and Slad cave. The girl notices that on the left, on the right, from above, there are only rocks, earth and sand everywhere. And he starts complaining about how much more they have to go. The girl's voice sobers him from his thoughts. Slade was so lost in thought that he didn't listen to what Ethics was saying. But he warns that they need to put out the torches so that the goblins won't notice them. The girl says it's not difficult for her, but how will she see in the dark? He tells her that he will get used to it over time. And besides, once his companion was a specialized thief, although he walked and could not see the traps, thanks to imitations of his movements, he was able to get around them. But now it will be easier for him because he has Ethics, and she just needs to be alert and cover him with the power of night vision. To which the girl replies to him that he can rely on her. As they make their way through the bowels of the cave, the ethical question arises, do they really need to be on their guard? After all, in fact, the hobgoblin she killed was their leader. Slad replies to her that it is, since he is very big. He is most likely their leader. However, the goblin lost his composure so much that he didn't notice. It was as if he was running away from something. Ethics is surprised by what they see in front of them. They were rattles. The girl laughs, saying that this is such an obvious trap and who can get into it at all. But Slad tries to stop the girl and now she steps on the cliff of the canyon and begins to fall. But the guy manages to give her a hand in time so that she grabs it. And together they end up on Earth. And then the main character realizes how smart these goblins are. They made a false trap from above, and the real one from below. Ethics crawls to the edge of the cliff and looks deep into it, starting to speak into the void, even though they are goblins. But this is already arrogance, repeating it countless times already. Slad also comes to the edge of the cliff and realizes that there is a very large depth there. Continuing his reflections, he is amazed at how well the position of this trap was thought out. If you go around or go ahead, you will somehow end up in a hole. Finishing his reflections, he says that this is very clever, and most likely, a goblin magician is waiting for them. Ethics asks again, goblin magician, and does he specify how strong he is? Slad explains that a goblin can use dark magic and cast curses using negative emotions. Sitting on the edge of a cliff, the main character calculates whether they will be able to crawl under the rattles. It's unlikely, because if goblins are around, they will be at a disadvantage, and he does not want to neglect the safety of Ethics. The girl stared at the thoughtful Slade, but he suddenly jumps up sharply, which scares the girl. He came up with a great idea. He asks Ethics to summon the earthly spirit, and that he be as small as possible, asking her if she can do it. He understands that although the little spirit is weak, they need it. The girl summons the earthly spirit without hesitation, and he appears right in front of her face, saying that everything worked out. He says to trust him and that he and Gnome will cope, and now the fight begins. The walls of the cave began to collapse and the silhouettes of goblins began to be seen from them. They began to quickly advance on the heroes. Slad shouted to Ethics that they were coming so that she would get ready. As the guy guessed, they're dodging traps, and they're rattling rattles on purpose, heading towards the heroes at breakneck speed. But they do not realize that Ethics and Slad also have a trap prepared for them. As soon as the goblins sense something is wrong, they freeze in place. Here Ethics comes into play with her bow. She quickly shoots at opponents and wins. Both adventurers exhale with relief and give each other a high five. Ethics says they did a great job and that it was a great plan. Moving on, Slad replies that he just thought that if everything is controlled by a smart dwarf, then his subordinates should also know about the location of the traps. Then he looked at Ethics and remembered the spirit of Noma, who is able to rule the earth. It was he who helped expand the original hole to a huge size. Both characters squat down to thank Noma for his work. At the same time, Slad says that the goblins ran along the path that they considered safe until they fell into their trap. Although this is a simple plan, it would be impossible for an ordinary person to set up such an ambush. He learned this from an old friend, how to win by outsmarting the enemy. Putting a gnome to his cheek, Ethics says that this is unforgivable, because they will have to ask to bury the hole that he dug himself. Slad notices how actively Namu is jumping, and thinks that he is asking to rely on him. And Ethics, in turn, says what a hard worker he is. Some time later, all three of them are standing on a large stone in the middle of a huge cave. Slad is looking for something among the garbage, and Ethics is interested in how he is doing. The guy replies that it's useless and there's nothing special here. He tells her to better look there. This is the road they came by, and the other paths are connected. And also that there are surprisingly many footprints here, saying that this room was definitely used to move between tracks. Ethics asks, doesn't this mean that a goblin is likely to appear here at any time? Then the girl suggests that if we leave Noma's friends here, they have to cope. Slad is not sure, because the spirit can only be called in one place at a time. He would prefer to walk this path with Namu. Then Ethics says that this time it will summon a bigger spirit and they will all fight together. The guy doesn't understand. Does she need to do this right now? A crushing force appears before their eyes, and they are shocked by what they see. Ethics, frightened, asks, and is this a friend of Noma? This spirit is so huge that the heroes can't go any further, so they'll have to wait until he wakes up. The girl immediately begins to apologize. She did not plan to summon such a huge one. Slad asks her to calm down, saying that everything is fine and she is not to blame, because most likely it is because of him. After all, its automatic support has its drawbacks, and she unknowingly improves the object's support skills. It can be said that this ability strengthens the body of an ally and slows down the enemy. She grants him power, but she cannot be controlled. That's why he asked to summon the smallest spirit. The goblin, seeing such a huge spirit, just ran away. The heroes did not understand what had just happened, and Ethics asked if he had run away, and Slade replied that it looked like it. Slad suggests that there may be a boss's lair in that direction, so they need to prepare to strike, saying that he should do it. The guy notices that Ethics has blocked the passage with earth, by suggesting if they can't block all other paths, then the reinforcements won't get through. Ethics adds that when the enemy weakens and tries to escape, a trap will overtake him here. A sled connects to it, saying that the excavated earth can be put into this passage. Inspired by their idea, they both shout out that this battle will begin. The guy wonders when was the last time he was so excited about adventures. In the hero's team, he only heard swearing, and after retiring, people challenged him every now and then because of the skill. Ethics notices Slade's condition and asks what happened. Why did he freeze in place? The girl comes closer to him, saying that a pleasant fragrance comes from him, but then she abruptly becomes embarrassed by the words she said and takes them back. After all, that's how adventures should be. The heroes keep walking straight and see skulls in the walls. Ethics notices that the atmosphere is not the most pleasant, and Slad explains that goblins love such rituals, and it seems that the magician is not far from here. Ethics stops and focuses its attention on one of the skulls. The thought comes to her mind, is this really a real human skeleton? They hear the screams of the goblins. Destroying the wall, one of the goblins approaches them. The heroes can't understand. Maybe the goblins had an internal conflict. But Slad understands that this fire and magic spell means the boss is somewhere nearby. The walls of the cave collapse, and the characters see an ambiguous picture in front of them. A throne that is far away, which is why they can't see who is sitting on it. But as soon as they got closer, Slad realized that in front of them was not just a magician, but a monster of a rare kind. A goblin witch. Goblins, little monsters that gather in groups. In fact, the goblins of the upper class are divided into two types. Hobgoblins using physical force and goblin magicians wielding hate magic. Males treat the female gender like slaves. However, occasionally a female is able to mutate and acquire the skills of a goblin mage. And then she climbs to the top. This is a goblin of a rare kind. The goblin is a witch. Slade thinks that witches' hatred of harassment by men is different from what drives goblin magicians. Apparently, this hobgoblin was trying to escape from her domain. The hero does not understand what kind of place this is. Slad asks Ethics, isn't this monster in league with the rest of the goblins? In that case, they need to call for backup. But the girl tells him to look at the place where she is pointing. A lot of people are following each other in handcuffs. Most likely they are adventurers, but why did they catch them? Ethics says about the terrifying path, and that there were human bones there too. They're going to use these guys in some kind of weird ceremony. He understands that this is an impossible fight for Ethics. Besides, the monster probably has rare abilities. He's trying to stop a girl jumping into battle. But suddenly, fragments of what he was called in the hero's team, mediocrity and a porter, pop up in his memory. Apparently, Ars was right. An ordinary person who does not possess the power. His skill went unnoticed, so he tried his best to use the numerous items in the rear of the team. But he still stayed behind. He always stayed in the rear. but now he can help save those adventurers and ethics. He accelerates and runs as fast as he can to the Goblin Witch at the meeting, saying to himself that he will be the one who will defeat her. Slad tells Ethics not to attack the witch, but to attack the enemies around her with the help of Namu. The girl understood and took action. The main character runs towards the goblins, but at the moment realizes that he cannot cope with them, and then Namu comes to his aid. He deals with these giant goblins, freeing up a passage for the Slad, and he, in turn, praises the spirit. And now he has 3 more little goblins on his way, but Ethics takes them on himself. He mentally thanks her. The Goblin Witch uses a large-scale fireball spell. The main character will not allow her to do this, although no one uses this technique, because it is quite ordinary. But it can be used in other ways. He did not lose his head, quickly picks up a stone from the ground and aims it straight at the witch, using the so-called provocation skill. The stone flies right into her head. Now all her attention is focused only on the main character, and he understands that she will direct this attack at him. A vortex begins to form in the air, which begins to suck in everything. Ethics tells him to get out of there as fast as possible. But as soon as he feels in danger, the fully automatic debuff will work. The witch does not understand what is happening to her and her body, why she feels this way. She tries to recreate the funnel, but all her attempts are in vain. Ethics is in complete shock, not understanding what has just happened. Does Slade wonder if she's surprised? The witch has not yet realized that she is completely exhausted. In her eyes, he's just amazingly powerful. The witch started to go crazy. Therefore, she uses venomous claws and relaxes her vigilance. But Slad does not hesitate and also slowly attacks the witch with his blow, intercepting her hand. The hero's grip is so strong that her bones break. The witch feels weak and attacks him with her staff, but Slade dodges all her blows in time. It was his protection from spells and poisonous claws, because she was already helpless, and all the force was directed at her, and she fell to the ground. The main character realizes that her hostility has not disappeared yet. Ethics alone does not understand what is going on. Since the girl now knows the rank of the main character, he needs to tell her the truth. He tells her that she is weakened, thanks to his unique skill fully automatic debuff, and she does not even have the strength to stand on her feet. That's why he didn't fight the Hansa. And then everything comes to the girl instantly, and she understands the essence of what is happening. But he goes on to say that at first the fully automatic debuff reduces the opponent's physical strength to the limit and causes accelerated aging with each subsequent second, although the changes are invisible externally. But the effect increases with touch. Even with a light touch, bones break with a bang. Ethics says it's too powerful a skill. He adds that if the hostility disappears, then everything goes back to normal. He sits down on his knee to look at the condition of the barely breathing witch, at the same time saying that the Goblin Witch, born in hatred, has no idea how to trust others. Ethics empathizes with her and says that she needs to give medicine to the witch as soon as possible. But Slad says it's useless, because a witch experiences what is called an accompanying curse. Now the girl understood. This is a rare skill that hits an enemy with an attack that was aimed at killing a witch, so it is possible to destroy her only by allowing her to die a natural death. But it is also possible to poison or exsanguinate her, so his abilities turned out to be useful this time. Ethics can't stand it and starts crying, covering her face with her hands, unable to cope with these thoughts. She understands that the witch is forced to live only by hatred and curse everyone. She is a damn unhappy creature. She continues to cry bitterly while hugging the stone tightly. He realizes that this hatred has ruined her and he hopes that in the next life she will be able to be happy. Some time later, a man turns to his brother and sister, saying that they really saved them, asking if it was really a rare kind of monster. If they hadn't come to the rescue, they would have already become a part of this temple. This was all said by the adventurers whom Ethics and Slad had rescued from captivity. They were going somewhere together. Another adventurer praises Ethics, saying that she is excellent with a bow and her skills are simply amazing. Another adventurer praises his brother, saying that he was cool too, and then asks what did he even do. Someone from the group replies to him that he used provocation, an amazing distraction. After that, the adventurers finally see the light, and they realize that this is the way out. And they go out to an incredibly beautiful garden, which seems to shine. The nature in this place is amazing. Big green trees, beautiful rocks, and the purest water. Ethics admires what they see in front of them. Slad touches the girl's shoulder, simultaneously congratulating her on completing her first assignment. And then he asks if she remembers what she said before they entered the cave. And he is responsible for her, that her selfish desire is to protect the people dear to her heart. Those adventurers were strangers to her, but these are people who wanted to protect the city no matter what. So first, he suggests celebrating it for them. Ethics smiles, while listening attentively to him and happily adds that she was able to save them. The adventurers are happy that they are finally free. They scream with joy, rejoicing in the fresh air. They run up to the heroes and hug them. One of the guys tells Sweet that he thinks he's a great adventurer. Ethica says that she is grateful to Sweet and that she was glad to go on her first adventure with him. If it wasn't for him, she would only be defeated, so she wants to continue working with him as a team. Slad recalls that they had already talked about this during the mission and that he planned to stay with her on the team. The guy says that it's good. The girl jumps for joy and says that she will confidently continue on her way with her bow and spirits, thinking that the next task will be more difficult than this. Some time later, it's already night outside the window. Slad and Ethics are sitting in a bar. A girl knocks a glass on the table, asks the hero a question, is it a fully automatic debuff? To which the guy asks her if she's drunk. She moves closer to him and asks that her archery skills and the summoning of that strong spirit are only his merit. How can she accept this news without getting drunk? He couldn't have said that before because she was so happy. The girl clicks and lies face down on the table, saying that she thought that she was useful to him. The guy jumps up from the table and says that naturally she was useful to him and her abilities are amazing, because his skill is useless without the skill of the support object. And today she helped him many times. To which, the girl replies to him that they will go to his hotel today. The guy opened his mouth in surprise and can't believe what was said earlier, ethics. And now they have already come to the building. They enter the room, but the hero still cannot believe what is happening. However, the girl is only happy, saying that his room is just incredible and the huge bathtub is also incomparable. He finally understands why she wanted to go to his room, just to swim. He sighs with relief, saying, well, that's good. The girl begins to take off her clothes, to which the guy turns away in embarrassment, saying that he is still here. But Ethics does not bother, it's alright, because it's a good thing. He thought he heard something, but decided to pretend that nothing had happened. He calms himself down by saying that it's just Ethics, so he'll go for a walk. He goes out on the balcony and the thought flashes through his mind. Is she of age or not? No, elves age slowly. He finds himself thinking that this is not what he should be thinking about. A girl comes up to him and asks what he is doing. In surprise, the hero jumps up, saying that she finished quickly. But Ethics explains that this is due to the fact that she is drunk. Walking around the room, she comments that this is exactly what you would expect from an SSS rank room. Slad asks Ethic if she will have sweets, to which she responds positively. The sled is coming back, but there is a sleeping Ethic in front of it. He covers her with a blanket to keep her warm at night. The girl says the name of Slade in a dream, which is why he is surprised. Ethics continues and says that she had fun today. She doesn't understand how much fun she can have. After all, it had been a long time since he had thought that adventures could be fun. After his journey with an old friend ended, all sorts of guys who were only interested in his skill began to wrap around him. Then he joined the hero's team as just a porter. His abilities were too well known in the old continent, so he gave up adventurism. However, now on a new continent, along with Ethics, he can catch up as an adventurer. But it's worth putting aside his goals for now, and first of all, you need to think carefully about how to save travel expenses. He turns his head to the sleeping Ethics, and initially, he'd better think about where he's going to sleep tonight. He can't just lie down next to her, because the nights on the new continent are so long. After a while, he abruptly wakes up from sleep. He remembers that Ethics fell asleep in his bed. But she is still childishly innocent, but her body is quite mature. And what is he thinking about? It finds records of S-rank privileges. This was one of the privileges offered free night entertainment. It is not uncommon for a man and a woman to make a mistake one night can lead to a rift in their team. The guild provides an opportunity to prevent such situations. This system exists not only on the old continent, but also on the new one. A girl comes into his room, calling him Mr. Sweet. It's good that this opportunity differs from the usual one in that you can also discuss exciting problems with the girl. The girl walks into the room, saying that he did a great job. She hands him a glass of water, asking that he didn't expect things to turn out this way. Does he clarify what MIDI means? The girl explains to him that when an elf calls a man of another race family, it is equal to wanting to marry him. These are the traditions of the elves, asking if he knew. He asks again in surprise, married. Midi sits on the bed and tells him that first of all, family is not friends. But in the book that Slad read as a child, it was written that elves call recognized comrades that way. She turns and looks him in the face, saying that it is incredibly difficult for a girl to wholeheartedly recognize a man of another race. Continuing her conversation, she climbs on top of him in parallel and says that this is not surprising. After all, the simple-minded elf was helped by a complete stranger, as well as an adventurer of the SSS rank, asking him who would not take this as a gift of fate. She leans right into his ear and says she doesn't mind becoming his second wife if he so desires. But the main character immediately pushes her away, saying that he cannot afford to buy her out. He does not have the money for it. However, the girl is just laughing at him. The girl assumes that she had no friends in her homeland besides spirits. Among their race, men don't even look at fat girls like the elves. After all, it turns out to surprise relatives only with the abilities of summoning spirits. Slad wonders if the girl can summon spirits and clarifies if she was an adventurer in the past. The girl is pleased to hear this and says that with her abilities she could become a C-rank adventurer. The atmosphere in the room is heating up. The girl moves closer and closer to the young man, stopping near his ear, and saying that if she kisses him on the ear in this way, then it's a marriage proposal. And to show your consent, you need to kiss back. Mitty moves away from the main character, saying that this is such a ritual and advises him to take care of the information he has just received. Slad says he understands everything. The girl says that the elves are very gentle, but if a man betrays them, they will not just leave it. The guy asks in disbelief to stop bullying him once again. But Mitty goes on and says if they become teammates, he can say that it's all friendly, right? But Slad asks not to lure him into this dark path. Some time later, Ethics sits and eats delicious food, saying that it turned out just delicious. The girl is sitting at the table and as soon as she sees her partner, she calls him to join her. She asks him where he went, to which she receives the answer that he just took a walk. A waiter comes up to them with trays full of food and says that Mr. Slade's breakfast is ready. The main character thanks him. He likes that he did not even have time to sit down, but food was immediately brought to him. Slade becomes uncomfortable with Ethics after talking to Mitty. The girl notices the guy's strange mood. After what Mitty said earlier, he doesn't know how to look Ethics in the eye, while the girl asks him to try this yummy faster. And yet, it seems to him that he thinks about it too much. He can't even ask about it directly, because if in fact he is mistaken in his reasoning, he will die of shame. Ethics asks how the elven vegetables taste to him, and Slad replies that he liked them. Some time later, the girl is shocked and asks that they have defeated the goblin witch. Then she will send priests to bury the goblins. She wonders if an ordinary team would be able to destroy such a monster. They were both safe and sound. Ethics tells us that they were able to win because Slough knew what skills the enemy was using. The main character explains that he once came across this in a book. Then the girl with a smile on her face declares that she forgot that Slad is an adventurer of the SSS rank. The guy clarifies, is the SSS rank so cool? The girl does not understand what kind of questions he is asking. He explains that he suddenly wanted to know. She begins to explain that, first of all, if a person does not have innate skills like combat or sacred, then he cannot become an adventurer at all. In addition, to rise above the A rank, you need to have another rare skill besides the innate one. To be more precise, the S rank was created so that people with rare skills would know their worth. The SS rank belongs to those who have a unique skill, but its presence alone is not enough. You need to have such achievements with you, such as saving the country. The S rank is also great, but among the special SS ranks there are exceptional individuals who even founded an entire state. Well, he says that such a person really was, while Ethics stands with his mouth open in surprise. The hero asks, so, what about the SSS rank? She tells him that it's simple, it's the savior of the world. He asks, is he being treated like the man who saved the world? The girl says that it turns out that way. However, Slad does not think that such a thing could be possible, because his skill works on its own. The girl begins to actively look for something behind her back, simultaneously asking if they can sign some documents, taking a piece of paper from her bosom. Slad asks if this is a confirmation of the reward for winning. But the girl with a calm expression declares that this is a statement of marriage and asks to marry her. Both characters stand in complete shock, not expecting to hear something like this. Slad doesn't understand how to get married right now. However, the girl explains that she is in complete despair. How long will she be considered an old maid? She says it's enough for her to just become a wife on paper. She doesn't care about marital duty. But then Ethics decides to intervene, blocking the Slad with itself, as if separating it from the girl. She opposes this proposal. The girl asks why else, and he asks outsiders not to talk too much. To which, Ethics answers her that she is not superfluous, because Slad is her companion. The girl wonders if this means that she wants to get him for herself. Of course, because SSS rank is status, money and power, it's not surprising. In response to this, Ethics responds to her that of course, high rank and money are good, but, first of all, Her close friend is happy. That's why she doesn't want him to marry a man who only needs power and money from him. They look at each other with angry eyes. Slad asks for forgiveness, then the girl retreats. But she had to try, otherwise she would regret it for the rest of her life. Angry Ethics turns around and walks away from the guy, saying that she will be waiting for him at the exit. He thinks to himself, is she upset? It probably is, but he can't believe he's so important to her. Then, the girl standing behind the counter asks the main character how he feels about Ethics. He did not answer the girl's question, but immediately left the building to Ethics while calling her name. He thanks her, remembering that she said that neither status nor wealth are important to her, which he is very happy about. But she says there's no point thanking her for that, because that girl is just crazy. Slad begins to incite her, but Ethics asks the question, is this normal for people in society? But the main character answers her, it's also strange for them. She says it's encouraging, but she understands that there will be a lot of people like this girl. And then Slade decides to ask his question, does Ethics want to marry him? As soon as she heard this question, she stopped and blushed all over. The main character realized that he had blurted out too much and tried to hush up this topic, but nothing came of it. These words came out of his mouth on their own because of yesterday's conversations. He asks her for forgiveness, and the girl tells him that it was reckless. Slad replies to her that it is customary for elves to call the family of a person of the opposite sex, whom they want to marry. The girl blushes even more and says that he knew everything. This makes her even more uncomfortable. But she says it's only because the elf feels grateful. To clarify, he has no reason to marry her. But the main character interrupts her and asks, what if it's wrong? But she asks him to say those words again as soon as he gets to know her better. She asks, wouldn't it be troublesome to get married right after meeting? After the words she says, she sits down on the ground and burns with shame, which is why the guy starts laughing very loudly and hard. Confused Ethics asks, what's funny, she said. But Slad tells her that Confused Ethics is such a cutie. But she asks him to stop and take that smirk off his face, and asks him to stop acting like a grandfather calling his granddaughter cute. He picks Ethica up from the floor and pulls her by the hand, saying that they still need to buy equipment and if they don't hurry up, all the shops will close. But the girl says they didn't finish. After a while, they are already in the shop. Ethics looks around with eyes full of happiness, and Slad looks at the armor standing near the rack and remembers the question of the girl at the reception desk. How does he feel about Ethics? In fact, he does not know at all what he is looking for, so he got to a new continent, completely without a purpose. If he were to explain, as Ethics said, then he feels that she is his family. They run out of the store happy and in new clothes, because their adventures are just beginning. Some time later, Slad asks a man in uniform, is someone waiting for him in the vestibule? And this is a thug. The man replies that this man introduced himself that way. And so they told him where they were waiting for him. He went down the stairs and a young man was sitting there, saying that this hotel was very cozy, while calling the name of the hero. The guy asks if it's Shicha, to which he greets him in confirmation. Shicha is a thug. The young man asks why he asked him what he was doing here. He expected to see a different reaction to his sudden appearance. But Slad replies that Shicha is always able to find him wherever he is, so he wasn't surprised by the word at all. The young man says that his friend trusts him very much. He says that he came to the main character because he missed him, but he does not believe him. And so Shicha reveals the true essence of his parish, saying that he has 3 pieces of news. He wants to start by saying that he will not leave you indifferent. Soon, without him, the hero's team will be completely destroyed and this will lead to the end of the world. The girl and the guy are running as fast as they can, dealing with monsters in their path. After they finished, they began to breathe heavily due to fatigue. There is also a girl with them. She stands in front and realizes that they could not cope with the monsters in one blow. The guy says that the monster was stronger than usual. The girl adds that her blood froze in her veins when he attacked her in a defensive position. The guy asks if that means it's his fault, but she says she didn't mean anything like that. The girl in the hat interrupts their conversation, saying that usually Slad was the one who helped them. He talked about the weaknesses of the enemy on the battlefield. She argues that although the main character has always stood aside on the battlefield, he has never been useless. Besides, this guy may have been a simple porter, but Shicha is amazingly strong. After such a loss, he didn't even try to find a new member. And even more so, she will go in search of him. She doesn't understand what he's thinking. The man in the armor says go ahead. Someone is rushing at the speed of light next to the heroes, and a monster flies out of the ground. The girl in the hat realizes that it is a wyvern. The monster already wants to attack them. and all the team members are scared out of their minds and don't know what to do. Some time later, Stud asks the young man that the hero's team will be destroyed. But why? He answers him with a calm expression on his face, because he left their team, an adventurer of the SSS rank, while pointing to his photo. Shicha asks what did the main character think he wouldn't find out about it. He has known him for years and should understand perfectly well that he is a person who checks his condition every morning. And he can't miss it. Slud thinks to himself, how could he know that he does this every morning? He continues that after joining the hero's team, hacking and defusing traps always went smoothly. So smoothly that he started looking for reasons. If Slade had been hiding even a little bit, he wouldn't have used his real name. And the second thing he wanted to discuss was that he had left the hero's team. The decision he made will help him to stay ahead, in his opinion. Although he feels sorry for those who are still there, Shicha is not a bad person. After all, adventurers always have to risk their lives. Slad does not think that the team would have been defeated if he had left alone. But his departure is a significant loss, so while he is burying his talents in the local guild, they will move to a big city and find a replacement for him. Shicha bets 500 gold, stating that Ares will leave the city without replenishing the team. If the main character is not with them, then the hero will have to cope with the attack alone. Slade is not surprised, because this is too reckless an act, as expected of him. Shicha says that he overestimates Ares too much. He asks if he would look for someone in a town where there aren't even a rank adventurers. Moreover, he does not consider men. Slad asks the guy if he thinks so. After all, he is a good adventurer. The guy jumps up and tells the main character that he is too naive and that if someone whines that he needs money, he will immediately give him everything. To which the main character confirms his words, adding that he really covered the debts of many people, but he voluntarily acted as a guarantor, so he does not complain about anything. Now Shicha understands why he is always left with nothing. In any case, his bet was a success, and he says that yesterday Ares left the city with the team in the same composition. Slad thinks to himself that there should be at least 2 attackers in the squad. After all, it is impossible to protect the rearguard alone, and if its movements are limited, then the balance will be lost. In the worst case, the team will be completely defeated. The main character says that this is unfair, because he already knew the answer when making a bet. To which Shicha replies that he told him not to trust everyone. Sweet doesn't even have anything to object to, but the guy continues, saying that this was not an isolated incident. Shicha declares that he will not leave the main character alone. Of course, he did not say a word about accepting the challenge, but the last thing he wanted to talk about would definitely entertain him. Some time later, Shicha eats the steak with both cheeks, saying that he is now part of the team of harmony and ethics. He introduces himself, explaining to the girl that they used to be teammates of the hero and he is pleased to meet her. The girl is silent for a long time, and then begins to resent why she only now found out that Slad was in the hero's team. And the main character saw no point in telling her about it, since he was a simple porter and did not play an important role. But Slad did not even dream that a professional thug could join their small team. To which Shicha replies, as long as the main character has such an amazing skill, it is more profitable for him to stay close. Ethics thinks SSS rank and the hero's team is starting to feel like Slad is that hero, but isn't he too much like an ordinary traveler? But Shicha says that Slad is a nice guy and asks you to take his word for it, which makes Ethics even angrier. After a while, all 3 of them are riding a horse somewhere, and a spirit is flying behind them. Ethics asks, doesn't it mean that the hero's team is in danger and they need to catch up with them? Shicha says that it is very generous of Slade to go to the aid of the man who drove him away. But now he is the leader of the team and he will listen to him involuntarily. Ethics asks, will everything be okay if she intervenes? After all, she had heard that the hero performed many feats. The main character thinks for a couple of seconds, and then says that this is not the best time to talk. Shicha repeats his lines after him, making fun of him not the best, saying they're on their way. Slade continues his narrative that the hero uses a sacred sword. Uses a bound sword, as the parrot repeats after him, Shicha adding that he also knows how to ride a horse. The main character says that Shicha's tone is a little sarcastic, to which he is answered that he is talking nonsense. Shicha reasons that Ares will surely survive and he won't be surprised if he uses those 2 as bait. But Slad tells him that this is how he will fail his probation, a rude and arrogant man without a single dignity, who does not listen to others, asking if this is not the image of their hero. Then Shicha is interested in the main character, doesn't he have any flaws himself? Ethics sighs heavily after much thought, and she says that she agrees to help those guys, not to mention the hero himself. After resolving the dispute, Slad decides to check with Shichai if he has calmed down, and he says yes. The guys continued their journey on horseback. Slad realizes that he seems unhappy, but pretends that he is doing everything under duress. Shicha continues to follow the most reasonable conclusions. It's really important for him to go scout out how the hero's team is doing. Speeding up on a horse, Shicha crashes into something. After that, with his right hand, he shows them to stop and asks Ethics to stop the Sylph wind. Ethics doesn't understand what happened, to which Slad says apparently he noticed something. Meanwhile, Shicha was in front of them and seemed to be looking at something. The guy sat down on the ground and Ethics immediately runs up to him, asking what is there. She is horrified by what she sees. In front of them lies the hat of the witch Ramuri from the hero's team. Shicha panics, starts shaking all over, and in between he mutters to himself something about his plan. Ethics, being around and hearing what he is talking about, does not understand what else is the plan. But Shicha rushed forward without any hesitation. The girl shouts at him, but he did not seem to hear her and continued on his way. Ethics anxiously asks Slade if everything will be alright with the man who was here. The main character replies that he does not, since Ramuri could not have left a parting gift to her mother in the middle of the forest if nothing had happened to her. The girl understands what this means, but is afraid to say these words out loud. Then Shicha runs out from behind the bushes. He's finished with the reconnaissance and tells Slad that he didn't find Ares and the guys nearby. There are no traces of them or dead monsters either. The main character thinks that the hat must have been blown off the battlefield. Then he decides that they need to return. The guys turn around and head for the horses, but they are stopped by the voice of Ethics. She asks why they are so indifferent to this. Aren't their friends in danger? Slad apologizes to the girl for what happened. They both understand how it looks from the outside, and they also understand their role perfectly. Shicha tells her that if one day she continues the path of an adventurer, one day she will also understand. The girl looks at him in disbelief. Some time later, Slad stands all alone in the field and thinks that he can't do anything. Shicha's thug is looking for a leader, and he watches from here to see if there are any changes around. Ethics approaches him from behind, asking for forgiveness for what happened. But he tells her that he is not angry at all. To be honest, he felt anxious himself at that moment, but Shicha calmed him down. The girl asks the name again in surprise. The main character explains, although Shicha is quite sharp-tongued, but when it is necessary to hide his emotions, he speaks in a measured tone. At such moments, oddly enough, all the members of the team calm down, including Ares himself. He understands that Shicha really wanted to stay on that team. Ethics understood, but wants to ask something else about him. When they found Ramuri's hat, she heard Shicha say something about the plan. Slad asks again in surprise, not understanding what plan he is talking about. The girl explains that she has no reason to be suspicious, but at that moment his expression was terrifying. Slad tells her that Shicha is a good guy, although he is quite greedy for wealth, like other thugs. However, even though he puts on a mask of cruelty and malice, he secretly gives the money he earns for the treatment of sick people. All this time, Shicha stood behind a tree and listened to their conversation. But the main character continued, saying that maybe his expression was terrifying, but he certainly wouldn't hurt anyone, and that they shouldn't jump to conclusions until they hear the answer from him. But Slad is not finished and says that most importantly, in the future, what Shicha is building, they will never regret anything. Shicha comes out of his hiding place, thinking how strange Slad is behaving, saying that he found the tracks and they don't have time to cool off, and they need to move out faster. The girl notices that Slad and Shicha are so close to each other. The thug asks what makes her think that. Ethics is wondering why he was so embarrassed by the words he heard. The main character thinks he shouldn't hear all these conversations. After walking some distance, they stop. Shicha shows them something, saying that he has found out something, and he thinks that Ramuri is safe because there are no traces of her burial nearby. The girl sighs with relief, saying that this is good. Slade argues that for sure the Holy Virgin would have taken care of the burial if anything happened. But Ramuri is clearly not capable of fighting right now. If she'd been able to fight, she wouldn't have dropped her hat if she'd been conscious. Ethics asks, does she have some kind of illness? She has not received an answer to her question, but Shicha says that there are small traces of blood here. But if she is alive, she is most likely trying to restore her magical powers, and they'd better take a look at what the thug is showing them. And these are footprints, and the footprint is very deep. Shicha brags, saying that this unique Disa skill, which brings victory from the first attack, is called Critical Strike. Ethics is interested in what is a critical strike. Shicha explains that this is Disha's unique skill, delivering a precise fatal blow to an opponent using his weaknesses. The girl asks with such enthusiasm, is it really true? Saying that with such a skill, she is certainly very strong. But Slad says that everything is not so simple and the Holy Virgin cannot fight. She provides impeccable sacred protection. The winning from the first attack skill is certainly powerful. However, combat abilities are not inherent in the owner of the sacred power. And above all, the blow is not aimed at monsters, so it can only be used when that person is cornered. He tells Ethica not to mention what he said earlier to Dish when they meet. Although they talk about a unique skill, it's a sore point for her. Shicha says there are 2 pairs of tracks ahead of them. Apparently Disha is carrying Rimuri on his back. Ethics suggests that they should already leave. They get on their horses and hurry as soon as possible to save the team of heroes. At that time, the monster is fighting with Ares. He thinks to himself, apparently, this monster is a rare species and she is much stronger than anyone they have ever fought. Thinking to himself, apparently, this monster is a rare species and she is much stronger than anyone they have ever fought. The monster flies up, makes a 360-degree turn and heads towards the heroes. But Rimuri takes out his staff and casts a spell called Airblade. All the force of this blow is directed completely at the monster. Although she definitely hit the monster, but he did not fall. He was only dealt a lot of damage, which caused him to have severe shortness of breath. The girl knocked down the wyvern, but it did not fall. The monster loomed over her, and the girl, unable to even get up, looks at him and begins to ask for help. Ares, already at large, heard Rimuri's words of help, but chose not to do anything, citing the fact that she was no longer a tenant, and the wyvern was just hungry and he was very sorry. The Holy Virgin flies into the cave and hits the monster, thereby weakening its vigilance. Rimuri does not miss the opportunity to activate his skill using the critical strike and they finally deal with the monster. Both girls are safe. Disha praises herself, saying that she got in well. The Holy Virgin notices that Rimuri is crying and calling for Slade, lying on the ground. Disha understands, and it's true, if he were here now, then like that time, he would protect Rimuri. Ares starts laughing and says with a grin that the girl has coped and asks if she has deviated from fulfilling her sacred duty. To which Disha asks why he didn't protect Rimuri, saying, in this case, wasn't protecting this child his sacred duty. But Ares answers without hesitation that his sacred sword would help from such a distance. But Disha replies that he is a hero and could at least use the Airblade spell. Ares says how successful it is. After all, the Airblade is an elementary skill and he is so comfortable with his sword that he has completely forgotten about these skills. He doesn't understand what the problem is. Even if the girl died, he would be able to defeat the wyvern with his magic. The girl gives him a bream, but Ares did not expect such a reaction to his words. Disha tells him that he really is trash. He asks how dare she hit him, and he doesn't understand what it even means. The girl replies that they will talk later, but in the meantime we need to take Rimuri to a safe place. Meanwhile, Shicha, Slad and Ethics stand in front of a huge house, and Shicha is betting 1,000 gold that they will stay in this mansion. But Slad can't call it a bet, because the tracks of those 2 lead here. The main character argues that there are only 2 pairs of footprints, but what about the other people from the mansion? But what Shicha tells him is that it was pouring like a bucket here quite recently, so it's not surprising that the tracks were washed away. The girl asks if they are really going there. Ethics explains that she has a bad feeling because the spirits have gone quiet. In that case, Slad sends Shichu to investigate. The girl is surprised that they believed her so quickly, because she may be wrong. Shicha runs out of the bushes, who has finished making his rounds of the mansion and praises the girl, saying that she is doing well, saying that this mansion is actually a monster. He runs up to his comrades and asks if the main character knew about this in advance. He says no, even though they were dealing with 3 monsters that lured victims in this way. The girl is horrified by the number he said. Slad begins to explain. The first was a house that waited and absorbed magical animals. Inside the second house, a fake hotel, there was an unlimited number of undead rebels, which became a real phenomenon. They were already sitting near the campfire, but the main character continued his story, and an unexpected meeting awaited them in the third house. Shicha clarifies that when they knocked, no one answered and it was suspicious. Slad says that yes, there are no owners in this kind of mansions, so no one answers. The thug notices that Disha would definitely not have fallen for this twice, which he cannot say about Arsa. The main character continues, besides, dealing with the dead, could not help but notice their presence if it were a fake hotel. But there aren't countless footprints in this house, so maybe they're dealing with a third kind. A fairy of nightmares, a unique monster. The door slammed behind the main character. He was inside the castle. Above him hung a luxurious chandelier made of gold. A girl in a dress appears in front of him. She looks to be about 13-15 years old, and she greets him and tells him, "Welcome to her abode of dreams." He asked if he was really in the dream world and if he was dreaming, to which the girl answers him that everything is exactly like that and he is already in the depths of sleep. Although he does not believe in what is happening, he still decides to ask who this girl is. Maybe she's the rarest of species, a fairy of nightmares. A little while later, the main character is again on the street in front of the mansion. Shicha wondered if it was true that this was a unique monster. He can't believe what he hears, and he clarifies whether this means that he is on the level of legendary monsters. Slad confirms his words. Among all monsters, 16 species are recognized as the rarest. Mere mortals cannot compete with them, because the strength of each of them is comparable to the divine. The main character says that the Fairy of Nightmares comes to them using various forms that are beyond this world. Therefore, in some countries she is revered as a god. And this mansion is not the body of a fairy, but only one of her forms that wanders in their world. Shicha fearfully asks if he really just knocked on her door, saying that he came up and knocked so shamelessly. All this time, the thug stood behind a tree, hiding and shaking like a leaf. Slad thinks that there is nothing wrong with this. Shicha asks if there is really nothing wrong. The main character hesitated a little before giving him an answer. He said that in essence, the Nightmare Fairy is not a bad monster, and she won't get angry even if you touch her. The thug doesn't believe this can be true. He says that doesn't mean that she is not under the influence of the Demon King. Friendly, not like all those mentally retarded monsters. Still, Slad doesn't think she was sane. After all, only a truly lucky person is able to get out alive from the dream world of the Nightmare Fairy, and as a rule, those who entered her mansion never returned. Suddenly Shicha stands up abruptly and declares that he suddenly wanted to take a walk, and Etika shouts after him, asking if he is really going to leave, leaving his friends here. And the thug replies that he will do so, because this is a voluntary death, because the rarest species are the same as the Demon King himself. All this time, ethics held him so that he would not leave. The girl doesn't understand what the Demon King has to do with it, but Shicha replies that the Demon King who has afflicted their world with curses and chaos, this is the weakest of the 16 rarest species. Ithaka can't believe the words he said and asks if this Demon King is really the weakest. And Slad bursts into their dialogue and adds that the Fairy of Nightmares is the 8th unique monster. If the strength of uniqueness depends on the serial number, then she is somewhere in the middle. Ethics, almost crying, declares that there is another king and a new invasion. Shicha hugs the girl and says that she can only return if she is lucky. Then Ethics suggests that they not go there at all. Slad reasons and says that he doesn't know about those two, but Ares definitely won't cope. Because many believe that the fairy forces the lost to have terrible dreams. But in fact, people meet in the world of dreams, the so-called embodiment of innermost desires. Then indeed, now the hero of humanity is sleeping soundly. Shicha says that the main character quickly came to terms with this. Rising from the ground, he approaches the guys and says that most likely they will cope. The thug becomes furious and does not understand how the main character came to such conclusions. And he answers with a calm voice that he has already fought with a unique monster when he was on the same strong team. Now the two, with their mouths open in surprise, do not understand what Slad is talking about, and the main character notices that they are so loud. There is complete shock on their faces. Shicha says that this is the first time he has heard about this, and Slad says that he ended up there completely by accident. It's hard for the main character to remember that time, and with a heavy sigh he continues his story, saying that thanks to this incident he was doomed to fame on the old continent. Etika says that he now seems to understand why he is now SSS ranked. Shicha supports her words. Slad thinks to himself that this time he no longer has that reliable team with him and it's dangerous to go there together. So he says that first of all, he needs to talk to the Fairy of Nightmares and he will try to persuade her to return the guys. Shicha asks if the main character is really going to negotiate with a monster of the rarest kind. But then he sharply declares that everything is in order and he will protect the rear. And Etika says that she also needs to do something. But Slad stops her, saying that under no circumstances should she go there, and if their plan fails, then she will need to tell the king that the hero is captured in the kingdom of the Nightmare Fairy. And let her stay here with Shich. She asks what if he doesn't survive. Slad tells her not to worry about it, and if it weren't for her, then they would silently enter the world of dreams without thinking. As Shicha said, each of them has their own role, and Ethics did an excellent job with hers. Therefore, now it is the Slal's turn to play its role. He approaches the front door of the mansion and hesitantly knocks on it 3 times. Some time later, he is in a dream world. He remembers that when he knocked 3 times on the door, he came here to talk to her. It dawns on him that this is a dream, and now the Fairy of Nightmares is in front of him. The fairy says that it's cool because he realized that he was in a dream. Because everyone usually forgets when they come to the abode of dreams. He says maybe it's because he has no desire to drown in his dreams. She says she doesn't really care. The fairy is glad that her wish for someone to talk to her has come true. She jumps up and clenches her fist until it starts to shine. The fairy says that she is obliged to show Slal proper hospitality. All the tables begin to move at incredible speed, with a ton of food on them. Many puppets appear, as well as musical instruments. The curtains tie themselves, taking their original shape. And now a huge table is laid in front of Slad. Everything is beautifully decorated, as if they were just waiting for his appearance. The entire hall is enveloped in music. All the musical instruments are playing under the leadership of a puppet in a hat. The main character is incredibly happy about this surprise. The fairy tells him to eat whatever his heart desires. But he understands that this is a dream, and the fairy asks in surprise whether he really dares to underestimate her dreams. She tells him that everything that happens in this dream takes on its form of truth. If he drinks water, his throat will not be dry. If he eats tasty treats, his stomach will be full. Therefore, if he dies, he will actually die, because you cannot wish for immortality in a dream, because it is impossible to be immortal. Slad thinks to himself that, contrary to the legends, that all cherished desires are fulfilled here. The fairy cannot recreate what she herself does not want. The main character begins the meal, saying, if the fairy insists so. He can't believe it, slaps himself on the cheeks, and realizes how delicious this dish is. The fairy realized that Slad really liked sweets. The main character comes to the realization that, as they said, the Fairy of Nightmares is only trying to please the guests of her monastery. That's why no one wants to leave here. Then he realizes that he himself almost fell for this trick. Now he is worried about the question of how he can get out of this dream. The Fairy of Nightmares tells him that everything is very simple. As soon as he wishes to wake up, he will wake up. But he doesn't need this, because here he can spend a carefree life, as in his most cherished dreams. But Slad says that someone is waiting for him outside. The fairy asks if he means this girl. And Ethics appears before his eyes, standing completely naked and walking straight towards the main character. Approaching him, the girl asks if they should stay here just the 2 of them. But he quickly comes to his senses and says that this is not real Ethics. The dummy of Ethics does not understand why he hesitates, because while he is in a dream, he can afford anything. She tells him that there is nothing wrong with eroticism, because he is a man, and invites him to have some fun with him. They are in a dream world so that this precious child will not be harmed. And he tells Slad that he can relax and not blame himself for anything. The main character pushes away the ethics model and accidentally touches a jug of water, and all the liquid ends up on the girl and flows down her hair. And Slad says that everything is fine, he was already tired last night. Suddenly, the Fairy of Nightmares suddenly appears and declares that it's so boring because he still doesn't lose his head in her sweet dreams. Now she realized that the main character was quite satisfied. Slad understands that if he had taken precautions from the Adventurers Guild, everything could have ended much worse. And he thanks Mitty. The Fairy of Nightmares calls the guy a traveler and asks if he wanted to ask her some question. She reads the thoughts of those who enter, but he wonders how much she can hear. Slad doesn't even have time to open his mouth to ask his question when the girl asks if he really wants to wake up those who arrived at her monastery. And she tells him that this cannot be done, because only they themselves are allowed to decide whether they want to wake up or not. The girl notices something in front of her, her eyes begin to sparkle, and she says that this is such a surprise, and yet she can fulfill his desire. But he wants to hear the request personally from the traveler's lips. Slad says he will say it, and asks to allow him to go into their dreams. Some time later, Slad is already in the dreams of his former comrades. It is located in the middle of the forest, in the middle of nowhere, where there are only trees. He doesn't understand what this place is, and suddenly, out of nowhere, the Fairy of Nightmares appears and says that she is very happy and cannot believe that Slad invited her with him. The guy replies that this is only because she is the only one who knows everything here, and asks if it really makes her so happy. The girl answers him without delay, which is of course. Many people know her, but not everyone wants to spend time with her. Slad thinks she can only really show what others want to see. The Nightmare Fairy says that they are in the baby witch's dream. And somehow it's not nice to barge in like that without an invitation. But everything is in order among all three. This child most wants to meet Slad. They see a fairly spacious house, and in front of it stands a witch and two children frolicking next to her. The girl's back is turned to them. Meanwhile, Ithaca and Shicha are sitting outside the mansion. The girl doesn't understand. Slad really hid his skills in the heroes team. He asks why she thought about it so suddenly. He says that this question has been on her mind ever since she overheard them talking about the past. And it's not difficult for her to guess what will happen to the heroes team without such a powerful support skill. Ithaca thinks to herself that the main character underestimated his role in the team too much, relying too much on his comrades. Can she even ask about this? But in theory, Slad shouldn't be against it, and yet she decided. Ithaca says that at first she didn't even realize how much her powers had increased. She thought the spirit was just in a good mood, and this turned out to be one of the features of the unique automatic support skill. Shicha supports her and says that it took him a whole month to realize that he was under the influence of the enhancement. But he only recently realized that in addition to this, Slad also weakened the enemy with a debuff skill. Regarding his caution, it may seem that Slad simply cannot trust them with this secret, but he is very naive. And besides, he so easily revealed all his cards to ethics, and when they created a team, Slad completely exposed the truth to everyone. Shicha comes to the conclusion that he was not trying to keep anything secret from them. He says he probably had his own reasons for hiding things from them. Ethics does not understand what these reasons are, to which the guy answers her that he doesn't know that. The girl tells him that since he doesn't know, he shouldn't have been so self-important. The thug says, what if Slad told her this because he fell in love with her? The girl blushes at his words and says that it was very nice of the main character, and Shicha thinks to herself that this is a new reason to tease them. Ethics asks why, despite such an incredible skill, Slad has such a modest opinion of himself, and he says he needs to be more confident. Shicha replies that he seriously considers his abilities to be mediocre. The girl asks if this is really possible, even with his SSS rank. The goon says yes, that's right. He asks, for example, if she can imagine her life without the abilities of a spiritual priestess. The girl says that it is quite difficult and she never thought that she could lose contact with her spirits. Shicha explains that this is the point. Even as a spiritual priestess, she considers herself an ordinary adventurer, and they are inseparable from their abilities, especially when it comes to the unique skills that people acquire from birth. It would not be an exaggeration if he said that these abilities are part of themselves. After all, for Slad the skills of automatic buff and automatic debuff are commonplace. Ethics replies, shouldn't he at least feel cool when he uses his grease? Shicha replies that no, because Slad cannot use his abilities. She must understand the role of the adjective automatic in the name of his skills, and that their skills are always up to them, so they activate and use their abilities at will. But Slad cannot do this because automatic skills work regardless of the desire of the wearer. The girl asks if that is why he is the main character so indifferent. Shicha says that this is not the only reason, and he simply does not consider his skill that amazing. Ethics says it's pretty cute. The goon asks if she really thinks so, and he even envies him a little, because such abilities free him from the burden of responsibility. And it's not easy to bounce back when you have to face the consequences of your actions. The girl is surprised after the words he said, and he begins to encourage the guy, saying that his skill is no less amazing. The goon asks if this is true, denying what was previously said by the girl, and Ethics at one time envies strong guys, while, sweet in Rimuri's dream, two children are running around the mansion. The witch stands with her back to the main character. The Nightmare Fairy and Sweet are standing behind the trees, and the guy notices that it is Rimuri's hat. The fairy says that yes, he is right. Her dead mother is standing in front of them. He says that they need to see which of these two is Rimuri, the one they are looking for. After all, Rimuri is a half-breed with deathly pale skin, and both of them are no different from ordinary human children. The fairy asks if the traveler is listening to her. It becomes clear to Slad that this was her desire. She only wanted to be born an ordinary child. The fairy wonders what he plans to do next. He says that of course he wants to get her out of this dream, and without hesitation he comes out of his hiding place, approaching the witch, starting a conversation with her, greeting her, and asking her if the weather outside is really wonderful. The fairy is surprised by his coolness, saying that he greeted her very coolly. He understands why she praises him for such a small thing. The witch greets him, saying that she is glad to see dear guests, and asks if she can help them with anything. The girls stop when they notice strangers, and the girl standing in front runs up to the guy and calls him Uncle Sweet. And the main character asks if this is Rimuri by chance. The girl happily declares that yes, he thinks that she is so happy and different from the witch he knows. Rimuri tells Slad that she likes him. He says that's it, he likes her too. The main character tells her to listen to him, saying that they are now in deep sleep and he came to pick her up and asks her if they should go home together. The girl turns away from him and says no. He is so sorry to destroy such a happy dream for Rimuri, even though the Fairy of Nightmares will not harm her, but he is still worried. He says that it's good then, and he leaves and asks for forgiveness for disturbing him. The girl runs up and asks if he is really going to come back. She says he should think again, because he can stay here with them. The witch asks to listen to her and asks if her second child is against it. The second girl says she doesn't mind. Slad does not understand what kind of child this is. Maybe she is Rimurum's sister. They seem to be the same age. The main character says that now they are waiting for him in another place and his uncle is not part of little Rimuri's dream. Tears well up in the little girl's eyes. He asks them for forgiveness. He turns around and leaves, but suddenly he is transported to a completely different place. Apparently, he recognized the room he was in. The girl standing behind calls Slad by name. He flinches, and the girl continues and says that she doesn't want him to leave. Slad looks back and realizes that the clothes, the age, are the Rimuri he knows. Only her skin color is like that of an ordinary person. The main character asks the girl if she really hates her demonic essence that much. She says yes. If she could have been born as a mere mortal, this would not have happened. He doesn't understand what we're talking about. He thinks whether she had such a bitter experience in her life that now she cannot accept herself. He asks Rimuri if she remembers what he once told her. Naturally, the girl remembers this and asks if she can forget about this. Memories? A man with a pile of muscles blocks Rimuri's path and says that they don't sell anything to stupid demons. Another memory. In the establishment, two guys are dismissive of a girl and say that food seems disgusting to them when a demon is sitting nearby. Rimuri stands in a crowd of people who shout that she is a demon and how scared they are to be around her. Only Slad recognized her fully. She asks if she can't hear it again. Now the main character remembered. Then they spoke in this very room. He thought he said something stupid, but Rimuri doesn't think so. He extends his hand to her and tells her that she is beautiful just the way she is. Tears appear in the girl's eyes. They are standing opposite each other. And finally Rimuri extends his hand to Slad in return, and they shake hands. He asks her if she remembers her goal. The girl says that yes, she remembers. She wants to defeat the demon cows so that the world will recognize half-breeds like her. Exactly. Although it is difficult to imagine, even if she defeats the demon cows, there will still be those who will not stop despising half-breeds. But Rimuri knows this, and she herself chose this path, although she perfectly understands how many difficulties await her ahead. He wants to help her and tells her to go because it's time to wake up. And they leave the witch's dream. Slad and Rimuri hold hands. They have finally left the land of dreams and emerged from the witch's sleep. The girl seems to remember this place, but the main character interrupts her, calling her by name. At this Rimuri turns to face him, smiling, and says, "Good morning." In the moment she realizes that she has given herself over to her feelings and begins to blush sharply, not realizing the words she had previously spoken. Slad remembers how sincere she was in the abode of dreams, but now in front of him is the real Rimuri, and not her image from dreams. He strokes her head and realizes that something is missing, like her hat. Etika and Shicha come out of the bushes. The thug says that several days have passed since Slad left. He calls the girl, who has just returned from the abode of dreams, by name. The girl is surprised that Shicha is here, and he wonders where he was all this time. To which the guy tells her that this is a rather long story, but first he must return the hat to its owner. He holds it out into her hands. Rimuri holds the hat to his body and says it's so dirty, and asks for forgiveness from his mother. Suddenly Etika raises her hand, showing her presence, and declares that everything will be fine, and they can instantly call on the spirit. He will fix everything. Rimuri is surprised and asks who this new girl is. Ethics tells her that she is Slad's new friend and introduces herself. The witch compares herself with this girl and realizes that she is losing to her in all aspects. She can't believe that her curves are so much smaller than the girl she just met. She casts a contemptuous glance at Slad, and he understands what the girl wants to say, but he wonders what it has to do with him. Ethics begins the conversation by saying that there is no place here that can be called home, but she can call upon the spirit that dwells in every dwelling. And then he will put the hat in order. Rimuri's eyes begin to sparkle after hearing the news, and he asks if he can really do this. The girls seem to get along well. Shicha calls out to Slad, and he asks if they could arrange a small exchange of information, until he went to the mansion again. Some time later. It's quite late already. They sit near the tent and talk casually. Shicha reveals that Ares was the one who drove Slad away. Then Rimuri realizes that he lied to them. The thug adds that the actions of this rogue are still unpredictable. Rimuri told them everything that happened. Because of Ares, the hero's team got into a fight with the wyvern, a rare type of monster. Sensing her imminent death, Disha saved everyone using her critical strike. Then she carried Rimuri on her back, encouraging him with warm words. Ares insisted on staying that night at the mansion they found in the forest. Although the Holy Virgin was against it, she agreed when she realized that she could not do without rest. After hearing this, Etika asks how terrible a hero you have to be to make such a mistake. Rimuri supports her and says that Ares is the worst of all. Both agreed. However, Slad brings them down to earth and says that he is a hero, whether they like it or not. The witch cannot say anything in response because it is true. But Etika does not fully understand what is happening, so she asks whether the title of a hero is so important. Slad and Rimuri stand rooted to the spot after hearing this, unable to answer her. But Chicha interrupts this silence and says that he has not yet met people who do not know this. The witch begins to explain to her that the Demon King now reigns in the world. Chicha confirms her words. The girl continues, saying that he is also immortal. Ethics does not believe what was heard earlier. They continue to explain to her that the new monster is a rare species, which is considered the weakest. Chicha adds that he is different from mere mortals like them. Rimuri says that the Demon King has cursed the entire world. And the monsters began to brutally rampage, unable to free themselves from his power. The demons began to attack people, but they were once friendly. Out of anger, the girl clutches her skirt tighter, but she continues the story, saying that in order to defeat the king of demons, they need the sacred power of the hero, which is now Ares. She says that's where the story ends. Etika says that she understands everything and apologizes for the inconvenience caused. But Rimuri, sitting on a log with Slad directly opposite the girl, says that she is not to blame for anything. If anyone is to blame, it's the king of demons and the main character. The guy doesn't understand what he did wrong. Ithaka thinks to herself that since she compared him to a monster, she must hate monsters that much. Then the girl decides to ask if this clueless man is the only one who can save our world. Rimuri falls silent. For a couple of minutes, unable to answer Ethic's question, but she gains strength and says that this is not entirely true. Although the hero's skill is rare, it is not unique and can also be possessed by someone other than Ares. However, Chicha bursts into the conversation, gets up from his seat and asks if this is really possible. Saying that maybe the hero's skill is not unique, it appears once in hundreds of centuries. Rimuri says that indeed it is, adding that several heroes have never appeared at the same time. But she doesn't want to lose hope, and it would be better if Slad were a hero. The main character asks for forgiveness, saying that he is a simple, unemployed man. But then Rimuri intervenes and says that for her he is not a simple, carefree man, but a brave, unemployed man. Slad does not understand how brave this unemployed man is. And then she moves closer to him, hugging his hand. Chicha walks past them without even focusing his attention on it. The thug says that he not only returned from the Nightmare Fairy's sleep, but also returned Rimuri to them. And it could even become a legend. But Slad denies everything, saying that the Fairy of Nightmares is surprisingly friendly with guests. So he asks to keep it a secret so that he doesn't have to run away from fame again later. But Chicha says silence comes at a cost. The thug runs away from him, and the main character follows him and asks Shichu to give him a friendly discount. But he says he doesn't hear him. And then Rimuri says that everything is decided. She also leaves the hero's team and wants to become Slad's comrade. Chicha asks if she is sure about her decision. The thug says that it is impossible to defeat the Demon King without the sacred power of a hero and asks if she has decided to give up her goal of glorifying half-bloods. But she says no, because there is another way. They look into each other's faces for a long time, and Shicha, throwing her hands behind her head, says that it is so. And then the realization comes to Slad that all the time he was thinking why he pushed him to follow Ares, and that's what his goal was. Shicha throws up his hands and says that the Wyvern and the Nightmare Fairy were not part of his plan, and when they found Rimuri's hat, he felt remorse for abandoning them. Still, he can breathe a sigh of relief because they are okay. However, he asks Rimuri for forgiveness. But Rimuri doesn't understand what we're talking about. Ethics says that she has no idea at all, and the thug tells Slad to explain everything. But the main character is surprised and begins his explanation, saying that Shicha deliberately ran away at the same time as him in order to teach Ares a lesson and teach him to value friendship. All three are in complete shock, but for different reasons. Shicha did not expect Slad to blurt out something like that and says that everything is completely wrong. He wanted Disha and Rimuri to go with him. Slad asks, but why does he need this? The thug shakes the protagonist by the collar and asks if he really doesn't remember their desire to defeat the Demon King. And he says that he must understand that a hero unable to cope with his duty could not lead the team to success, and that there is no point in continuing the journey with a good-for-nothing bastard. Then Slad asks if he is talking about Ares by chance, and that it would be better if he realized how big a role his skill played. At the same time, Shicha hits the main character in the stomach and he flies off. The witch intervenes in their showdown, asking for forgiveness and asking what skill Slad has. After some time, Rimuri has already learned about Slad's skill and says that it is so cool and he is definitely her hero. The main character understands that now another person knows about his abilities, but this is Rimuri. Slad says it's time for him to go back. Shicha says that they still don't know how to cope without the sacred hero power, but he is confident that they can create a team that will defeat the Demon King. The main character believes that they are overestimating him, and he says that if he cannot return. But he doesn't have time to finish the sentence, telling him not to say such a thing and that he will definitely return, and the girls hug him. They all go together to the mansion. Slad comes to the door, knocks on it, then thanks the guys and goes inside. In front of him there is some beautiful castle. Birds are flying, the weather is good. Suddenly, the wall begins to crack. And it just breaks through. Then you can see the hand that broke through this wall. Slad remembers that he promised to return Disha. But suddenly, the girl attacks him, using her fighting abilities. Slad doesn't want to hurt her, so he simply dodges all the blows. But still he does not understand why she did this, and he ends up fighting her. The Nightmare Fairy welcomes the traveler again. The main character says that he is glad to see her again. He asks if they really aren't inside the mansion. The fairy says that is true and asks him not to worry. She remembers his wish. She explains that they have arrived in a small piece of such a huge world, and all he sees here is the dream of the Holy Virgin. The Fairy of Nightmares says that she is a very noble child, and it was not difficult for her to realize such a significant dream. Slad understands that in the dream world, what matters is how noble a person is. He thanks her and calls the fairy a nightmare. After hearing this, her eyes sparkled, and she wondered why he called her that. He thought that such a name would be suitable for the Fairy of Nightmares. He asks if she minds if he calls her that. And besides, he just used part of her name. She says that everything is fine, and she really likes this abbreviation of her name, and from now on Nightmare is her new name. He doesn't understand how she can be comfortable with this name, but he thought he had crossed the line with that nickname. He asks her if she doesn't take care of herself at all. The girl is surprised and repeats the question Slad just asked, and then asks if he means who she really is. But the fairy says that the only thing she should care about is his desire. He thinks to himself about his desire. The fairy does not have a true form in a dream. Here is only her image that appeared in response to the call of his aspirations. Talk to the fairy of nightmares, bring back your friends. She is with me to fulfill these requests. He himself created this image of the wish-granting fairy that he had read about in the old days. She says that everything is exactly like this, and seeing the happy dreams of travelers is her meaning of life, and it doesn't matter what form she takes. Slad thinks this is sad. Maybe it's because he is just a simple person. She crosses the boundaries of the mortal mind, and it's no surprise that she is a monster of a unique kind. The fairy says that he can talk to her in this guise because his joy makes her happy, and this is no longer part of the dream. A joyful fairy flies up to the main character and says that this is so great because he is the first to make her dream come true. The main character asks this question again, but the fairy says that they should postpone this conversation. Now they need to fulfill his wishes. Fairy cuts off and leaves Slad alone in Disha's dream. He is already starting to look around the area and realizes that the fairy has clearly eluded the answer. But he understands that he already needs to go and look for souls. While looking around the city, he notices a row of immaculate statues, an atmosphere of grandeur in the air. He understands that this is definitely a temple, only it is so terrifying that it does not look like a sanctuary. He looks around and focuses his attention on passers-by. Slad is trying to understand why there are only monks here, but not a single priest. Monk is a combat specialty. They hardly look like believers. People in this profession devote their free time to training in the garden. He understands that this is all a dream, but a rather strange sight. He turns his head and sees Disha in front of him. The girl practices her fighting skills, training to the bone. Slad stands in disbelief because she looks so impressive. She has gained a lot of muscles, and her body shape has become more athletic. She appears to be the same age as Disha, whom he knows, with the same greenish-golden hair, blue eyes, and slender body. But this is not a sacred vestment. She's wearing the same training outfit that the monks wear when they roam the temple. All that remained of the Holy Virgin's robe was a glove. Although he does not understand religion, her prayer pose is an excellent image from his memory, and now he hardly looks sacred. This time it won't be so easy for him to cope. We will have to penetrate into the most mysterious depths of her desires. As an outsider, he goes where others have a way to close themselves off. Nightmare was right. All you had to do was wish it. Slad calls the girl by name. She turns around, breathing heavily, and looks at the main character. But she wanted to see him, so she starts a fight with him, deciding to do it first. She swings at him, but the main character deftly dodges. He asks if she's really going to fight him. But then she decides on her signature blow, jumps high. She swings her leg straight at Slad and hits the target. The main character does not understand what this amazingly accurate roundhouse kick is. After all, the real Disha is not capable of doing this. And apparently this is her created appearance. After such a blow, he should have died instantly. But he managed to avoid such a fate. Because the automatic debuff has triggered and it seems that he is not welcome. He is trying to escape from the girl who is chasing him. It was very clear to him that the skills were not active in the dream. But how could her critical hit work? Or it must be activated until it reaches the target. These questions haunt him. Indeed, in the Chaldean case, he may die. He understands that he can't think about it now, because death in a dream meant death in real life. Then she too might die from the effects of his skill. Disha pressed the guy to the tree trunk. The guy realizes that he is trapped and asks the girl to listen to him. Then he asks with what purpose she is attacking him. Then he asks another question, asking if they are not friends. Disha says it is because they are friends that she wants to end him in one blow, so she asks him not to resist. And then her body is overcome by a terrifying pain, running from head to toe. She can't stand the pain, so she just falls to the ground. Slad sees this and tells her to stop, because it is because she is trying to harm him that she feels this way. But she interrupts the guy and tells him to shut up, because he himself knows very well that he deserves it. He sits down on the girl's lap and says that he still doesn't understand why she attacked him. Disha says this is all because she left them so irresponsibly. He suddenly disappeared and didn't say a word to them. At this point, the girl can no longer stand it and breaks into a scream, saying that she and everyone else trusted him. But suddenly she stops and looks the main character in the eyes. Then he calls him by name and is surprised, while asking if this is really the real Slad. She gets up with the deputy and dusts herself off. While the main character does not quite understand what happened, the effect of the skill has stopped. Most of all, this is because I unconsciously tried to eliminate unpleasant interference and continue to enjoy sleep. After some time, the guy follows the girl. Disha says that the story about his escape is a lie from Ares, who actually drove him away from the team. The girl turns around and says that still this does not justify the fact that he did not even say goodbye to them before leaving. Speaking of this, she thinks it would be quite fair to crack him once. Slad had these thoughts even in Rimuri's dream. He didn't trust the team, although he called them friends. All that mattered to him was the existence of his skill, and besides, he thought that nothing would change if he left the team. But they tried to find him. The guy stops. The girl notices this and asks if something happened to him. Slad tells her that this time he will not go anywhere. Disha hits the guy on the head and doesn't understand the meaning of his words and tells him, of course, that he won't go anywhere. They just won't let him go. The main character, holding his head after the blow, tells her not to be angry. Some time later, Slad told Disha everything, and she doesn't understand what he means. Asking if they were actually sleeping in the mansion of a unique-looking demon right now, and in the suburbs, if he decided to make jokes here, then let him prepare to get it one more time. The guy says that she is so formidable, and in response the girl only confirms this. Disha continues her questioning by saying that a dream is an imperfect reflection of reality. In a dream world, everything would not be so believable. Then Slad suggests going to the temple and seeing for yourself. Some time later, they are already on their way to the temple. Disha says okay, she would have refused if Ares had offered it to her, but since it was Slad, she went. He thinks maybe she will believe when she sees these strange monks. Both monks and priests walk in front of them. The girl asks if this is not the most ordinary temple, but Slad does not understand where the believers come from here. And then it dawns on him that this was all created subconsciously, because Disha simply does not believe that they are in a dream. He says that something still seems wrong. The girl notices that there is nothing unusual. The main character stops one of the passers-by and asks for his forgiveness, but he is simply ignored. He then tries to stop another of the passers-by, but all 4 attempts were in vain, and no one stopped. Out of despair, he falls to the ground, saying that everyone is ignoring him. Disha explains to him that everyone is just busy, and he tells her that they could at least greet him. Slal doesn't understand if the priests never talked to her, but he remembers that Disha lived in the temple since childhood. It couldn't be that no priest tried to talk to her. Is her dream really to be ignored by the temple servants? It seems he understood everything. Indifference of priests, ignorance of the temple servants. He wonders if he can intervene somehow, but his persistence can hurt the girl. Disha asks if that's all, and can she return to her practice. The main character does not understand why she needs this. She explains to him that, of course, training in the garden, because she is a monarch. It becomes clear to him that this is what the matter is. Slal understands that when she remembered him and the heroes' team, he thought that everything was fine with her. But it is not so. He tells her that she is Disha, or to be more precise, a holy maiden. After a strong blow, the monster is in the wall. It was Disha who hit that monster with her fist. The girl thinks to herself that she has never seen such a skill and that it is definitely unique. The little girl runs happy to her parents and says that they will not believe what she says now. But she only sees her father receiving a bag of money from some girl in a sacred form. The girl asks Disha's parents if they will really allow her to take her daughter to church. They say yes. And they notice that all this time the little girl stood next to them and heard everything they were talking about. They ask her for forgiveness. And Disha thinks to herself that she shouldn't cry at such a moment and she needs to be strong. A little while later, everything is in the same place, Slad and Disha. The guy tells her that she is a saint. But the girl does not understand how this is possible, because she has just taken the path of a monk. He thinks maybe he shouldn't interfere, and yet he decides to give her a chance to decide her own fate. The girl explains that she took the path of the monk to defeat the demon king. Slad asks if she really wants this. Disha says that naturally, this is everyone's dream. She says that everyone will be grateful and live happily if she copes. Saying these words, she begins to shake. They rely on her. It's so great. The main character clenches his hand into a fist and says that she is also one of everyone who wants this. He asks her to remember how she cured his wounds and when she had to save Ramuri. Disha remembers all this very well. He wasn't the target of the attack that day, so his skill didn't work and his injuries were terrible. After his words, the girl turns away, embarrassed, and says that he seems to be a simple porter, but so reckless. Slad thanks her for her help, and she, shrugging her shoulders, replies that it's nothing and nothing special. Disha has always been like this. It's not surprising to hear "you're welcome" from her in response to gratitude. She never saw anything special about helping. Healing wounds and saving those in need are the duties of the Holy Virgin. And Ares is completely different, because they never found a common language. But he realized something. He tells her that he is glad to see that even in her dreams she is still as kind. He mentally asks her for forgiveness, and explains that monks cannot use healing magic. The girl becomes furious at his words and tries to justify herself to the other monks, saying that it was not her. But they do not believe her and begin to say in unison that they heard about the appearance of the Holy Virgin, although they said that she was not here. But they understand that she is here and ask to help the hero defeat the demon king, and pray to God for their well-being, and also show God's blessing to the world. The main character understands that this is an ordinary site for the temple, and Disha plays her role as a priest in my dream. He asks her for forgiveness and says that she must remember everything. The girl is on her knees, leaning against the floor, tears flowing down her cheeks. Her talent is like that of a hero. She cannot refuse her role. Born into this world, the Holy Virgin becomes the one whom others need. And it doesn't matter what she dreams about. However, Disha wants to save this world with all her heart, so this is reflected even in her dreams. The girl says that she remembered everything. She was a holy virgin. But the main character says that she has the right to choose. He asks her not to try to forget it, but to simply choose whether she wants to be a holy virgin or a monk. Some time later, they are already at the bar. The girl is sitting with a bottle of alcohol, saying how irresponsible it is, and asks if he really thinks that she had no reason to become a holy virgin. Can't she be glad that she was born with a unique skill? She says all this to Slad, bringing the mug to his face. But the main character says that she really wanted to acquire a combat specialty. But the girl says that nothing bad will happen if she doesn't become what she wants. It seems to Disha that the only one who allows her to choose, just like that time, is the main character. Slad thinks that it's true that he can only hear such words from her. He tells her that she will hear his answer now. Suddenly, the place in which they are begins to change, and she finds herself in a closed room, fenced with bars. They have been praying for victory for many years now, and people can rest easy. She will fulfill her duty as a holy maiden and put an end to the many years of war with the demon king in order to restore peace to this land. She vows with all her confidence to return people to their serenity. People begin to rejoice and rejoice loudly. Both characters realize that something is happening, and then the nightmare fairy appears and the dream ends. Some time later, Slad hears someone's voice in his sleep. It was Disha. She asks him to wake up. As soon as he realized that he had been sleeping on her lap, he stood up fashionably quickly and moved closer to the bushes. The girl did not expect to see such a violent reaction. Slal says that apparently it was a real dream. He was very surprised when he learned that the Holy Virgin dreamed of becoming a monk. The girl, in turn, says that she didn't really want to become one, because she always did only what was asked of her. After all, it is her duty to help ordinary people. She constantly tried to convince herself that this was exactly what she wanted, which is why her deepest desire was to find her own dream. After some time, they both come to all the other guys, while Shicha sits and fishes, and the girls are already running to hug them. Rimuri hugs Slad with a running start. Ethics does the same, causing them both to fall and pin the main character to the ground. The girls feel awkward, and Ithaca wastes no time getting to know Disha. The Holy Maiden says that everything is clear and they need to save Ares as soon as possible, while Rimuri says that it will be better if they leave him sealed in this dream. Shicha completely agrees with Rimuri. Slad and Etika stand in shock, not knowing what to do. But Disha says, even though he is an incapable bastard, they were partners until recently. And besides, one cannot abandon the only goal of their whole life because of personal feelings. Rimuri runs up to the Holy Virgin and hugs her, saying that the girl still remains adamant, comparing her to a very strong wall. Disha says that it is natural, because her duty is to accompany the hero and save the world, and asks what the difference is, even if Ares was strong only thanks to Slad's skills. Because only a hero can use sacred power, and there is no reason to hope that there is another benefactor with such a gift in their world, and only under the leadership of Ares can they defeat the Demon King. Shicha didn't think she was so stubborn. He asks for forgiveness, saying he has nothing to add, and he's not going to help Ares. The Holy Virgin says that she is very sorry that they do not understand this. She glances at Ares and says that he is still silent and asks him to say at least something and his opinion about this whole situation. He says that naturally it will be necessary to wake Ares from sleep, as he planned from the very beginning. Then an inspired Disha asks if that means he will return to the hero's team. To which Slad replies that he will return if Ares accepts him. But he has one condition. He wants Ares to know about his skills. She doesn't understand why he does this, because if he knew about his abilities, he wouldn't be so arrogant. Shicha wants to say something, but Disha shuts him up, telling him to keep quiet for a while. He runs into Etika's arms and asks why she did this, and it's very cruel of her. Disha doesn't understand and asks what's wrong with using your skills. Of course, it is not easy, but it is natural for people to use their gifts. She asks if he really is so disgusted by the idea of working for the benefit of others, or if personal principles can be more important than the fate of the whole world. He tells Disha that this is not the case at all. Then the girl asks, "What's the matter?" Slad says that as soon as Ares finds out about his abilities, he will stop fighting altogether. All four stand in shock. Murray and Shicha taunt Slad and pull him aside. And Disha sits under the tree and thinks Slal says that, having learned about his skills, Ares will stop fighting altogether. All four of them stand and don't understand what he's talking about. The guy explains to them that he, like them, didn't understand it right away. This was said by the man who asked him to join the hero's team. At first it seemed to him that it was his situation, but it was not so. It was a shock to him to hear about Ares' true nature. As long as he is the only one who can save the world, everything is allowed to him, and everyone around him should only praise the hero. Only Ares can defeat the Demon King, and he doesn't need anyone. In fact, the hero's team is just fun. He didn't need comrades, he only needed pawns. This man does not care about saving the world. He is driven by a thirst for power. A boundless ego is all that remains of the honorary title of hero. Desha begins to object, saying that no matter what, she believes that even Ares has at least a shred of conscience. Otherwise, he would not have gone to certain death fighting monsters. Shicha collects water from the stream and asks what she really thinks, which hero would bet his life on. After all, this guy considers himself the center of the whole world. The Holy Virgin answers him that they are all not without sin, and everyone in childhood imagined that the whole world revolved around his feet. Stahl says that this is so, but Ares is sure of it now. Even after becoming a hero, he never grew up. These are the words of the protagonist's friend. Shicha says that they already realized that Ares acts like a child, but asks what this has to do with his skills. He explains that the abilities work automatically and they will not dance to his tune. All four rolled their eyes at the main character, waiting for the continuation. But Slad says that this is the end, and that's all. That's the reason. Rimuri and Etika are upset because his explanation did not make things clearer to them. Slad continues to say that this is Ares and he would never accept help from anyone. Desha enters into a dialogue with him, saying that she and Rimuri still do not have enough strength to defeat the Demon King. The protagonist says that this is why the hero would have to allow him to intervene, but he won't want to. Desha asks if this is the reason. Because it looks more childish. And then the girl realizes how it's all interconnected. She asks if it's really all about such a small thing. Slad answers her, it may seem to them that this is a trifle, but for Ares it is not such, and he is ready to hand over our world to the king of demons. The main character thinks to himself that who could have thought of such a thing, that the key to the hero's strength is pride. Ares, chosen by God, defeated the Demon King by turning to a worthless porter for help. He will never accept this. At this time, Desha still cannot accept the truth, and she cannot believe what is the truth, because they are all raised with the goal of one day saving the world together with the hero. Once upon a time, it seemed to Slad that he could rely on Ares, but he was wrong. But now he understands it. Saying these words, he puts his hand on Rimuri's head, after seeing that her hat is all dirty on the floor. The witch, in turn, watches the guy closely, thinking that he might do something else. And Desha says that's good and they won't talk about his skills after they wake up Ares. In the end, Slad convinced everyone and it was decided to save the hero, and after this conversation something began to bother her. Etika distracts her from her thoughts with her question, asking if Desha accidentally lost her mind. The Holy Virgin replies her question, saying that she has rather lost her way than is confused. It's so unusual, because she always had to move forward only for the sake of fulfilling other people's desires. Ithaka says that instead of worrying about the unknown, she asks why don't they think about new possibilities. Desha didn't quite understand what she meant. Ethics says that, for example, each of them at least once wanted to hit Ares at least once. Desha apologizes to Etika and says that she did not expect that someone like her could come out with something like this. The girl is surprised and says that they discussed this with Rimuri. But for some reason, it seems to her that in addition to saving the world, Slad has other plans for the hero. The Holy Maiden stands up and says that it is strange, although they only met Ethics today, but she has the feeling that they have known each other for a long time. Desha confidently declares that everything is fine and she has no equal in marriage. Having awakened the hero, they will all beat him together. A happy Rimuri runs up to them, not believing what she just heard, and says that this is very interesting. And then asks if the Holy Maiden will use critical hit. And he repeats his question twice to make sure of this information. Desha approaches Slad and tells him to save them from the land of dreams. Slad has sweat on his face and says that this is a very important assignment. Everyone stood up to see off the main character on a good journey and wish him good luck. He approaches the door, begins to twist it, and finds himself back inside the mansion. The Fairy of Nightmares appears in front of him. He clarifies whether it is really her, and, in turn, the nightmare says that he needs to move on, but she stops mid-sentence. Then Slad decides to ask if there are any problems. The fairy says that everything is exactly like this, because the witch herself wanted to see him. The Holy Virgin generously awaited his apology. But the hero is not like any of them. He asks if he dares to ask if he can even see his dream. Koshmarik says that it is possible, but in general she would not recommend doing it. Because some people's deepest desires may be others' nightmares, and every dream is the owner's personal world. She decides to find out if he really still wants to go there. The fairy flies into his arms and says that some souls should sleep forever, because they will forever see the dreams they desire, and will not be able to harm anyone in the real world. But this is not the case, and their hero is the only salvation from the Demon King. She gets worried and asks what if everything goes wrong. She asks what Slad will do if, in fact, not only sacred power is capable of destroying ancient evil. The guy tells her that no matter what, he will still wake up Ares. The Nightmare Fairy is surprised by his determination and unshakable spirit. He continues and says that they still haven't decided what they will do next, but they should definitely bring him back because the guys trusted him. The main character asks if he doesn't have the right to escape after everything he's done, and he doesn't think so. They look into each other's eyes, after which the fairy lowers her head to the floor and says that he is right. Slad notices something wrong in the nightmare's behavior and asks if something is bothering her. The fairy jumps away from Slad and asks if it's really that noticeable. The main character replies that yes, it's obvious from her. She asks what kind of business this is and how he isn't ashamed to delve into someone else's heart. And he answers her that this is being told to him by someone who is able to read the thoughts of other people. But he just cares about her feelings. The girl calls him impudent and shameless, and says that he just wants to get into her soul. But she says she doesn't care and wants to get naked in front of him. The Fairy of Nightmares lifts the hem of her dress, and instead of legs there is one large tree trunk. And it begins to glow, thanks to which Slad finds himself in another dimension. The too bright light blinds him, but the fairy tells him to watch carefully. And she explains to him that her true appearance is the night sky and how amazing her dream is. And these lonely stars that he sees in front of him are someone's sweet dreams, and they all sleep in her. Slad cannot believe what he heard and wants to say that these are her victims. But before he can say these words, the fairy covers his mouth with her hand, and he says that it is very rude to call them victims. The main character understands that his thoughts have just been read. And the girl continues to explain that she helps them fulfill their deepest desires, and they are here because of the cruel reality and unfortunate fate. He wants to object to her, but she stops him, saying that she knows what he wants to tell her, because so many lives have faded away in this world without achieving anything. The Fairy of Nightmares turns to Slad, saying that she also has a cherished desire, but it cannot be seen, but can only be felt. Her dream is to invite everyone in the world to her abode and give them sweet sleep forever. Saying these words, the girl looks quite intimidating. Slal is surprised and realizes that a lot of doors are flying before his eyes, appearing out of nowhere. They are hitting each other. These doors pull him in. He wants to get out, but all attempts are in vain. Then he calls the Fairy of Nightmares, but she only looks at him distantly. And then he says that this applies to him too, no exceptions. He tries to object, saying that such a dream is too dangerous, but Slad does not have time to finish, as he already finds himself in another place. After some time. Lock. Inside this castle, a man receives some kind of scroll from a newly arrived messenger bird. Then the same guy knocks on the door, And when he comes in, he says that he has an urgent message from the Holy Maiden from the Heroes team. He goes on to say that the Heroes team encountered a monster of a unique kind, a nightmare fairy. But thanks to the active intervention of a group assembled by a specialized thief, the witch and the Holy Virgin were saved, and the third visit to the enemy's monastery was crowned with success with the release of the hero. However, the man now called the porter is unconscious, so they ask for urgent help from the king. The hero's condition is stable and his mind has cleared. He is stopped by a man's voice who asks if he really just mentioned the porter. The one who stopped the servant is none other than the ruler of the kingdom of Seyfud, and his name is Cassiv Saywood Belcraft. All the guys sleep while Slad is in the dream world and saves Ares. But then Disha wakes up due to some noise. She sees that the mansion begins to crack and then disappears altogether. The guys who just woke up don't understand what happened. And the Holy Virgin shouts out the name of the main character as soon as she sees him lying on the ground in a motionless position. This really scared the guys. Rimuri shouts that Ares is also here. He was also lying on the ground and did not move. The Holy Virgin asks how to even understand this, and the witch wonders if they lost. Shicha stands silently. Etika says that no, and something clearly happened in the dream. Because the mansion disappeared and these two got out, it's probably not a matter of losing. And then Shicha begins to say that ethics is right, because the guys returned alive, but they still don't wake up. And it seems as if Slad fell into a coma. He is afraid that even the sacred spell of forced awakening cannot help. It started to rain very heavily. He raised his head up and began to wonder what happened in that dream some time ago. While Slad is being pulled into the whirlpool, he says that such a dream is too cruel, and in response he receives only a contemptuous look from the fairy. He tells her that at this rate, she will remain alone forever. She flies past him and slams one of the doors. The Fairy of Nightmares says that this is so. Dreams are in no way connected with each other, and communicating with someone in a dream is tantamount to talking with oneself. Because sleep is eternal loneliness, but everyone spends their time happily without looking behind the scenes, so everything is fine. It seemed to her that the monastery was an ideal world that fulfilled dreams. Until she met the main character. Slad doesn't understand what he has to do with it. But the fairy says that everything is exactly like that, and he is the only one who did not lose his memories when he stepped onto the threshold of the mansion. The main character clarifies whether he was the only one, and no one ever talked to her. She says that there were those here who came to talk, but they could not even remember what dream was as soon as they entered the abode of dreams. At the same time, everyone completely forgot about their desire to talk with her, because a forgotten dream cannot be realized in a dream, and it is different from others. Slad now understood everything why the nightmare was so happy about his arrival, because for her it really was unprecedented fun. The fairy says that only with him she managed to talk, thanks to his strong desire to meet her, and he was able to fulfill another of her dreams. And everything before was a mistake, because talking to someone who is awake is so much fun, she didn't know that. With her dreams, she may have given salvation to someone, but in reality, so many souls dear to her heart have been lost forever. She says all these words with tears in her eyes. Slad hugs her, asking her for a request. And it always seemed to him that the dreams she created were for bad reasons, but it turned out that she was actually very kind. This makes the girl start crying even harder. Slal says he's lucky because he probably didn't forget her thanks to the automatic debuff, since the illusion was not created intentionally and the skill considered its power dangerous, so most likely deactivated it. She says that this is not entirely true and his skill affected not only the illusion, but its effect was simply weakened. She is immortal, so the effects of aging cannot harm her in any way. Slal now understands what's what. This means that this automatic debuff effect is powerless against the Demon King. The fairy says that he understood everything correctly. And that's the whole point. Her unique strength was affected by his skill. Then she will also be of use in the fight against the Demon King. If he manages to destroy her, then there will certainly be a chance to destroy him. Past does not understand what the Fairy of Nightmares is leading to. She tells the traveler that she cannot control her abilities and that no matter where she goes, the guests of the mansion will continue to disappear without a trace into the world of dreams. Era unbuttons her jacket and begs him to touch her, and asks to check whether it is possible to kill an immortal. She says that he does not need to doubt, because he will not be able to enter the hero's dream according to his desire, and there will be only one way to wake up this child, and the fairy will not have any regrets if the world of dreams is destroyed by him. She touches the smart man's face and asks him not to make such a sad expression on his face. After all, this is wonderful. But Slad only becomes furious at her words, saying that these are not wonderful at all. The fairy asks him not to be angry because it is so upsetting. And he tells her that she says something similar and his words are much more upsetting. Slad asks how she can ask her friend to kill her. She is surprised and asks him again if they are really friends. The main character tells her that, and how can they not be friends after what happened? First of all, he cannot kill a child who is so repentant. The fairy asks him for forgiveness, realizing that she is saying something terrible. But before the girl can finish speaking, Slad interrupts her. He says he has come up with something and asks her to trust her. Slad told her his idea, and the girl clarified whether they would definitely succeed and whether it was even possible. The main character himself doesn't know, but he believes that everything should work out together. They will be baptized together. She says that if this plan does not succeed, then he may die, but the girl is interrupted again. Slad explains to her that he came to the world of dreams to bring back his friends, and now he has no reason to leave her alone. This time he would like to have a dream. He tells her that the Nightmare Fairy's real name is Night Vision, and there is no dream that she could not realize. She finally understood that the guy said everything correctly and there was no dream that she could not visit. The main character tells her to believe in herself and that she can do anything and the nightmare will definitely cope with everything. The fairy says that she can and believes that everything will work out. She trusts Slad's faith in her. So, she needs to hear his wishes. She asks him to tell him what he wants. The main character asks the nightmare to become his partner. The fairy disappears and Slad is left completely alone. He calls out to her and hopes that everything worked out. But suddenly a rare pain in his heart pierces him and, unable to stand on his feet any longer, he falls and finds himself already in his own world. Some time later, he wakes up already in bed, looks around and realizes that he is in the royal chambers. But he can't believe it, so he pinches himself and his cheeks. And suddenly, someone calls him. It was the Fairy of Nightmares, and she asks if he survived well. The main character is definitely happy to see her. He says that she is still in this form, which means it is still the same dream. But the protagonist's guesses turn out to be wrong, and the fairy says that everything around is absolutely real. Slad cannot believe what he heard. And the girl says that everything is exactly like that, and they were able to do it, as he said. The guy understands that this skill affects even her, his automatic debuff. The fairy says that they really succeeded. This is because he took his analysis and conclusions seriously. The automatic debuff worked on her, so the buff should also work. And the plan was quite simple. First they became comrades, the nightmare's magical power increased, thanks to his skill. Then she managed to take control of her abilities. And all that remained was to do something like this. The second half of the plan whistled only from her. But Slad doesn't understand why he fell asleep. The fairy asks him for forgiveness and says that her strength suddenly exceeded the limit and she did not immediately manage to cope with it. And therefore he fell into a deep sleep, which was difficult to get into. Slad asks why she remained in her current form, although they are already in the real world. The girl says yes, and it's amazing, because she barely managed to transform her mansion into a new look, which she borrowed from his memories. And that's not all. Now no one will forget reality when they are in a dream, and she can change other people's dreams at will. Slad thinks to himself that she is definitely a unique species and her full power is simply amazing. That is why she turned the hero's dream into a nightmare, and he was quickly able to wake up. Slad feels sorry for Ares. But he suddenly stops and cannot fully understand that if this is the real world, then why is he here? The fairy tells him that his friends have come to see him, so he'd better ask them, and she'll take a little walk around the area and tells them not to rush. Slad wants to stop her, but she has already disappeared. Now he wonders if it is normal that he gave such power to a monster of a unique kind. But if you think about it carefully, it was not a very deliberate act. Etika looks into his room and Slal's heart begins to beat wildly. He does not understand what this is connected with. The girl runs towards him, headlong, and waves at him, saying that he has finally woken up. When hugging, his body reacts to the girl, and he thinks how this could happen, because he recently used the services for adventurers and does not understand why he reacted this way. Ethics also quickly gets up and is about to leave, but Slad wants to stop her and says that he won't do this again. But the girl didn't understand what he was talking about and said that she would immediately call the guys to him. The girl closes the door behind her. Slad thinks to himself, even though he is under the blanket, everyone will come here at just such a bad moment. Etika, Shicha, Disha, and Rimuri, all four beautiful girls, will now come to him. The main character squeezed the blanket as soon as possible. He thinks to himself, if only he would calm down as soon as possible. Shicha looks straight at the blanket and asks if something happened. Slad says everything is fine. Some time later, the rest of his comrades came to see him. The girl says that she peeled his apples. He thanks her and says that he will eat from a little later, because now he cannot get up. Disha says that apparently the hero's return cost him dearly. Shicha adds that Ares himself woke up almost immediately. And Etika stands nearby, cries and says that they were so worried. But Slad has a lot of questions about what happened while he was sleeping, why they are here, and where a lot of the heroes are. Shicha nods to Disha in agreement. She says that this is a long story, and the most important thing now is to especially tell him one piece of news. After awakening, Ares went to court and reported their progress from the team. Because the betrayal of a hero is tantamount to high treason, all can't believe how this is an accusation of treason. Disha says that he really is a fool. Moreover, he filed a lawsuit against those who saved him from death. And now she tells him to listen carefully to what happened during the month while he slept. The main character cannot believe that he was unconscious for such a long period of time, some time ago. Slal is sleeping. Rimuri sits next to him and guards him. They are in a tent in the middle of the forest. At the same time, Ares is also there. He says, "What a pity," because he didn't understand whether some fake mansion or haunted house was to blame for the fact that she was sleeping so soundly. Rimuri falls into flight and dies the hero's hand from her shoulder. She doesn't understand why Ares woke up and Slad didn't. The hero says that this annoys him because he himself decided to run away, and why did he even need to return? Disha wants to talk about this. Slal told them that it was Ares who kicked him out of the hero's team and asked if he wanted to explain himself. Ares then appears, asking if they really believe this nonsense Slad said. They apparently forgot who they should trust unconditionally, the person who started to run away instead of saving them. The girl clicks when she hears this nonsense. Ares breaks into a scream and declares that he is just a useless porter, and what difference does it make whether he exists or not? Slad told them about the weaknesses of the enemy on the battlefield. He did not give in to this chatter when the enemy could be defeated with one blow. Rimuri tells him that he was ready to protect her at the cost of his life. But he tells her that becoming cannon fodder is the most suitable destination for a stupid person. But the girl tells him that if Slad had not come to the rescue in time, he would already be dead. But Ares says that this doesn't belong here, and he's still trash. He asks for a better explanation of what kind of elf this is. The girl tells him that she is his friend. Ares was very shocked by this news, and he begins to laugh very loudly. He doesn't understand how such a mediocrity as Slad can have a girlfriend. He tells her that she is simply being led by the nose and that this sleeping sheep is only good for carrying other people's junk. He asks if it would be better to join the hero's team. He tells her to listen and admire because he is the peerless hero Ares. But in truth, the one doing the joining must be at least a rank. But he will allow her to take on the role of his beloved. Etika begins to cry. Rimuri runs up to her. The elf says that in fact everything is as Slad said. Ares doesn't understand what we're talking about. The girl says that he really is a poor thing, that he is in love with himself. All three stood and looked at these two. Ares asks if this Slad spoke, and whether the language is Elvish is a coincidence. Ethics is completely shocking. Shicha explains to him that this is the name, and Ares says that this is the name of the one whom he calls stupid and trash. He says, so that's it. Now he realized that Slad is his name. Rimuri runs up to Ares and asks if he knows her name. But only silence is heard in response. Then the girl clarifies whether he really won't say anything. She says no, because he simply cannot, and the hero never called him by name. Ares denies this and says that it is not true, and trying to remember he says if her name is real. The girl stands in complete bewilderment. Disha and Shicha are equally surprised. The Holy Virgin dares to suggest that she did not even bother to remember their names, and for him they are not comrades, but service personnel. After all, he doesn't even know what their names are. He dispelled all doubts in one fell swoop. He doesn't understand what difference it makes, because it's just a trifle. Shicha states that he is now part of Slad's team. Rimuri says he supports this decision and they will defeat the Demon King together. Ares becomes furious. He doesn't understand what's wrong with all of them. He looks at the girls hugging each other and everything becomes clear to him and why they behaved this way. Ares asks if Sweet really performs so well in bed, and he didn't let them sleep all night. After his questions, he says what it means is all sabotage and did not expect such betrayal from them. Rimuri takes refuge from his words, clenches his fist and flies at the hero as fast as he can, hitting him in the stomach. After being hit, he falls to the ground. Shicha tells him to stop and shut up and not to compare Slad to himself. Some time later, the girl says that Shicha looked cool, expressing everything to Ares' face. The Holy Maiden asks if Shicha is really shy and why doesn't he tell everything himself. The thug stood behind the girl, but he blushed madly and disappeared a moment later. Disha turns and sees that there is no trace of him. She continues, saying that it's okay, because even someone like Ares needs a camp for the night. But bad luck, they start wondering what he did. Some time later, a girl's scream is heard throughout the area. It was Ethics. She was sitting almost naked. The rest of the guys came running to the scream. The Holy Maiden asks Ares if he really wanted to pester Ethics, to which the hero answers her that there is nothing terrible in this, even if they are not from the same team, but going on night dates is not prohibited. Shicha asks if he will become wiser if he doesn't have personal belongings. And now they are going to check this, because this will not affect the hero's abilities in any way, and Ares at that time crawls further and further away from them. Disha says even though this is not a pleasant sight, they need to finish before Slad wakes up. She asks the others if she can start. The hero does not understand what we are talking about. The girl tells him that it's a competition and blows are flying into his face. The Holy Maiden praises the girls, saying that the blows were good. and now she asks him to grit his teeth. Aries is horrified and hopes she's not going to use her critical hit. Disha says she doesn't hear what he mumbles there. Either use or not use. The girl heads straight towards him, swings and hits the target, leaving Aries not even a chance to escape. Now he lies on the ground unconscious. Disha says that there is no need for her to use a critical hit, because his death would bring her a lot of trouble. She asks him not to lose consciousness, because there is one more person left to deal with him. Rimuri stands behind him, ready to hit him at any moment, and finally, she swings and runs at him with all her might and hits him right in the face. It flies over several trees and remains lying there. Disha says that, as one would expect from Rimuri's unique skill, unprecedented power,